You're tuned in to HorrorSlop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is HorrorSlop.
Alright, kicking things off with a personal favorite. It's messy, it's weird, and it sets the tone real fast. Story 1. Don't blink.
Well, I'm at my limit and I've had little sleep. It's been over 24 hours since the incident happened and my husband and I still have no idea what to do, or how this even started. All I know for sure is that I will take any suggestions possible. Okay sweetie, calm down, I told her as she started to have a crying fit and kept tugging. It hurts, she screamed. I could tell her efforts weren't making any difference though, so I immediately distracted her with something else so I get a closer look. It wasn't easy. She was fidgety and any sudden movement I worried would make the situation worse. Even after an hour, I couldn't find a way to pry her arm from the wall, so I immediately called my husband at work and told him what was happening. I soothed her and let her watch some videos on her tablet as we waited for the EMT to arrive. When they got there, however, our troubles were far from over. There were 3 of them, and from the looks on their faces I could tell none of them had ever seen anything like this. "Hey there, what's your name?" the lady EMT asked, getting at eye level. "Emma Marcy," my 6-year-old stammered. "Hey Marcy, I know it's scary but we're gonna take care of you, okay? And when this is over, if you are a good girl maybe your mommy would let you have some candy," she suggested. I nodded and kissed her forehead as the other EMTs worked around the awkward standing position we were in to check everything out. Pulse is a little elevated. Nothing appears to be broken. "Ma'am, what's behind this wall?" the team leader asked. But my attention was focused on Marcy. The short reprieve we had to calm her down was over as she screamed and said something was squeezing her arm. And it got louder when she saw her daddy walking in the door. "Sir, please step back," the woman EMT advised. "I'm her father, Stan. Please, tell me you've come up with something. What is causing this?" he asked as he rushed to kiss me and then check on Marcy. The older EMT talked in between her bursts of fear. "Well, honestly I can't say for sure, but it seems like the best option right now would be to tear the wall down." "Is there no other way?" Stan asked. "They're wanting to amputate," he said with a stone face. I could see the tears that had streaked down his face when he had been arguing with them. I knew that if he was coming to me now it meant he didn't see there was another option. "They can't, no. She's just a little girl," I said as I covered my mouth and tried not to hyperventilate. "Listen to me, just listen," he said as he grabbed my shoulders. "They said we could think it over. And that they would consider other options too, but it's not looking good, not the way it's lodged in there," he told me. I shook my head, trying not to think about it. I knew that he was also struggling with this choice as well. So we told them we would call them back in a few hours. "It hurts so much, Mommy," she complained with a whimper. She was all worn out. I don't know how, but we got some sleep. Then this morning, I decided I couldn't bear to hear her in pain any longer, so I asked Stan to call the EMTs back. Then we got on the floor next to Marcy and he tried to explain to her what was about to happen. "We'll get everything set up and then tie her arm off right above the elbow to limit blood flow. Then once the medicine is in her system, we'll try to make a clean cut," the team leader told me. I was visibly shaking. They had to try again. They tried 3 times, each time only causing more damage to the saw than any progress on Marcy's arm. Finally they admitted they couldn't try any longer. They left muttering apologies and promising they would call back as soon as another solution presented itself. I'm at the end of my rope. I've done my best to keep Marcy well fed and dry, but I don't know how much longer this will go on. I'm asking anyone, please help us. Help my little girl. 330. Update, it's gotten worse.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I didn't think about that event until much later in my life. My dad died a couple years later of a heart attack. He was only 45. He was a good man. My mom raised me and only me from then on out. I tended to play by myself a lot, isolate myself, get caught up in those make-believe worlds in my own imagination. My birthday falls in the summer. All of my friends, all 2 of them, were on vacation during that day. I didn't really mind though, because I had a full day to myself. I was playing video games in my basement on June 5th, my 16th birthday. Something must have been barricading the door. I took a couple lunges at it, but the door probably did more damage to me than I did to it. Just before I was about to try and barge it down again, my ears went deaf, and I winced into a ball almost falling down the stairs. The neighbors called the police. They heard it too, but not as clearly as I did. A policeman let me out of the basement to what I can only describe as a blur now. I was 16, but in that moment, I was a baby again. A police officer carrying me out of the basement, shielding my eyes until we were out of the house. Police cars and ambulances flooded my small driveway. I moved in with my aunt and uncle. They, and the police, all kept saying the same word, suicide. The police say my mom barricaded me in the basement, but I knew back then that wasn't true. I was right, and I know that today. Now that I had some free time away from schooling, 6 months after my birthday, I started the process of selling it. I inserted the key, twisted it, and reached out for the handle, cold and metallic in the January air. And just then, I had an indescribable itch. An itch in the back of my skull. My hands tingled. I was unsure if it came from the cold, or something else. Something came over me though, and I opened the door. And just like that, the itch was scratched. Perplexed at what I was witnessing, I took a couple steps forward. With each step, it was like watching a transition from a movie, almost like a time-lapse. I could see my mother, my father, and me. With each swing of my leg we would jump around the living room, wearing different clothes, aging, different times of day, different seasons, and years would pass by. Something inside me told me to keep walking, but that goddamn itch just kept growing. I felt like there were fucking cosmic ants in my head tickling my brain, and I had no place in reality or the universe, and I didn't know where the fuck I was, and that goddamn itch was getting worse and worse. I felt like I was floating, and each step felt like I was swimming through my own memories while watching myself float away from Earth and the Milky Way and this dimension. My physical form was gone and my body was spread across the universe. Until it wasn't. My feet planted. For the first time since opening the front door, I felt grounded. I felt stillness and tranquility, momentarily. I felt like I didn't need to keep walking. I had my senses back. MOM. She could not hear me. Or was pretending not to. I grabbed a Smirnoff bottle and smashed it on the ground in hopes to get her attention. Nothing. All of a sudden, I realized I heard the faint soundtrack from Mario coming from my left, towards the basement. I turned back to my mom, who was now turning the shotgun towards herself. I felt sick and turned, knowing I didn't want to see this unavoidable end. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want me to see it. Quickly, I leapt over to the basement door and slammed it shut. I took the bookshelf and dragged it over to the door, setting up a small barrier. I ran out of the house as quickly as I could and slammed the door behind me. The cool January air swept across my body once again. I stood outside there for a moment, bewildered at the past couple of minutes, and let it all sink in. And once again, the tickle made its way to the back of my head. It wasn't harsh or demanding like it was before. It was almost nice, in a way. An inviting numbness. I could barely see the small boy coming down the stairs, then stopping in his tracks. I said to him the only thing I could think of then.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
If you see this man on TV, turn it off and leave your house immediately, by Richard Saxon. There's no more horrific sound than the screams of a mother who has just lost her child. Those were the sounds that awoke me in the middle of the night when the neighbor's boy passed away during the night. Officially he died from an undiagnosed, hereditary heart condition, but the rumors told another story entirely. Needless to say, his passing hurt us all, but none were as devastated as her. She pulled away from the community, hid inside her home. I don't even think she ever returned to work, until she just disappeared. I only got the chance to speak to her one time before she went missing. At which point she decided to tell me just what had happened the night her son died. "There's a man on the TV," he said meekly. "Yes, he wanted to hurt me," Ulrich cried. "It's alright," Mary simply responded, still holding on to him. "I'll keep you safe, just go to bed and know that I'm always watching over you." At first he seemed to be sleeping, but his position was odd, kind of drooping over the bed with his back fixed in an unnatural position. She turned the lights off, knowing he'd easily sleep through the dim illumination, and then she just froze in place as she realized that Ulrich's eyes were open. They looked kind of glassy, unmoving, and lifeless. With careful steps she approached him, and for each foot closer, it became more apparent that his back had been completely broken. As the realization hit her, she rushed over and kneeled beside him, not sure whether to touch him or to leave him be. His back was shattered, as were his arms and legs. There wasn't a single unharmed bone left in the little boy's body. He was dead, and had been for some time. But as weeks turned to months, and months turned to years, the tragedy of Ulrich's death and Mary's disappearance turned from one filled with sorrow, to a mystery overflowing with intrigue. People would start to actively seek out the static-filled channel, but none would ever discover it, none until my wife accidentally fell asleep while watching a movie. "Elise, come on." I called out again as I was starting to figure out what had happened. "What's going on?" she asked with a groggy voice. But I couldn't respond. The split-second-long sight of the man had awoken an innate fear deep within me. In that moment I knew that everything Mary had told me was true, and it terrified me. "What have you done?" I asked in panic. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Don't worry. I'm not gonna shoot anyone. It's just a precaution," I said. "What's going to happen to us?" she asked. "Nothing, we'll be fine," I lied. Truth be told, I'd never gone into detail about Ehrlich's death. I'd mentioned the TV, and I'd told her that he'd passed away unnaturally, but I didn't mention the broken bones and destroyed body. "Then why do you dash?" She stopped in her tracks. "What was that?" "I don't know, but I'm gonna check it out," I said. "No, stay here," call the police. If anyone's down there, you better fucking show yourself right now. I yelled, hoping the police would show up before I encountered anyone. But no one would respond. Sacrifice. Mr. Larson, one of them asked. I nodded. Honey, Elise, please open up, I called out. By then the officers had realized someone was wrong. They gave each other a nod, before preparing to break open the door. I've considered ending my life, but I need answers. I need to know why my wife died, and who it was. The only clue I have is Mary. Despite her blood being discovered all around the apartment, her body was never found, which is something that deviates away from the other murders. 10.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
I don't know how you'll receive this message, but you need to wake up, by Richard Saxon. Part 1, Current. Part 2. Part 3, Final. Those were the words that occupied my television screen. Moments before I'd been watching an old Western movie with my wife sleeping peaceful in my lap. It was just past midnight, which meant I must have dozed off at some point, as the last time I checked it had been just past 10. And work in the morning would be another exhausting adventure. But the words that had replaced the movie brought me straight back to attention. I sat frozen in my comfortable chair, momentarily forgetting everything that existed around me. The name, as generic as it was, felt familiar, but it wasn't mine. My wife let out a slight groan, probably dreaming something and talking in her sleep as she often did. I considered if I'd actually fallen asleep myself, if I was dreaming. The only way to make sure was by letting someone else confirm what I was actually seeing. She looked so calm, as if all the horrors in the world didn't matter as long as she was safe by my side. I took a moment to just admire her, and when I looked back up, the weird message had been replaced by the roll credits of the Western movie. The clock read 1:34 a.m., meaning more than an hour had passed since the disturbing message popped up. Time had skipped, but to me no more than a few seconds had passed. I remembered then that looking at the time while dreaming produces weird results. It had to be a nightmare, nothing more. Yet I couldn't bring myself to wake up. I convinced myself that the message had been a product of my sleep-deprived mind, that I existed somewhere on the edge of reality with one foot inside the realm of sleep. Then I noticed the painting on the wall. It was one that had always been there, but one that I'd never taken a second to just observe. Realistically, I knew my wife had hung it up there when we moved in together, but it was so distant, as if it only partially existed when no one was looking. The year felt so odd. Both the building and outfit seemed so much older. Just staring at it produced a growing feeling of dread within my body. Goosebumps formed on my arms, and I knew time had come to get some much-needed shut-eye. No sooner had I made that decision, before the world turned dark around me. You look tired. Couldn't you sleep? The light outside looked so strange. It was perfect in every sense of the word, rid of any obvious faults. It shined brilliantly through the clear blue sky, only interrupted by a few pure white clouds. A brilliant, orange gradient painted the horizon with trees dancing gently in the wind. Maybe you should schedule another appointment with Dr. June, Mary suggested. Gary, why don't you tell me what you think these dreams mean? It was such an obvious question, yet I never saw it coming. I hadn't thought much about it. My concern was mainly getting rid of them, not understanding them. Though lately I'd struggled to figure out whether or not they were truly dreams and not a twisted version of reality. Alright, document. You know best, I suppose. I was only jolted back to the world outside as I heard the faint sounds of someone crying. It was a girl, sobbing in the distance. Her voice echoed unnaturally through the busy streets, and while it took me a while to pinpoint their exact origins, I saw her standing in an alleyway on the other side of the road, ignored by the dozens of pedestrians walking by. She looked at me with a mildly shocked expression on her face. "They're not here. I want to go home," she said. She looked around herself. "I don't know. I don't like it here. This isn't real. I want to go home," she repeated. "What do you mean, this isn't real?" "Joanna," one of them asked. "No," she screamed in protest as he approached her. "You're not real. Go away." "Hey, wait a minute," I tried to interject. "Sir, the girl is sick. She needs help," they argued back before I could make my case. "Please, don't let them take me away," she cried again. It wouldn't be a particularly productive day, but my job entailed little more than tedious paperwork. Whether or not I was actually working, no one would ever know as long as I pretended to look busy. Once at my desk, I pulled the bottle of pills out to study them. The box wasn't labeled, nor did it come with instructions. It was just a container holding 30 small, white and indistinct pills. I rolled one of them between my fingers, trying to understand how something so small could possibly change my life. Whatever the case, I couldn't stay at work. I told my boss I was feeling sick, and like the great man he'd always been, he let me go home early. Once there, I just collapsed on the couch in front of the TV. Mary wouldn't be home for several hours, working overtime trying to complete a project, but I didn't mind. I made my way to the fridge looking for some food. There was a plate of my favorite meal there prepared by my wife. Then the television screen turned dark, filled with little more than a simple sentence. "Don't take the pill, Jack." At first I didn't understand what they meant. It was such a nonsensical message on its own, but then I realized how I'd been extraordinarily fascinated by the painting on the stairs the day before. How I'd been frozen in place before it for almost an hour. "Gary? What the hell are you doing?" my wife called as she found me standing on the stairs. "I've been trying to call you for hours. Why didn't you pick up?" Hours had passed, and evening had turned into early night. It had just passed 11 p.m., and Mary had been stuck working overtime, trying to get in touch. I'd been standing there, staring at the picture for hours. I don't really know. I never noticed the picture before. It was just kind of, there. Her comment confirmed every bit of oddity surrounding the picture. I reached out my hands to remove it, but Mary grabbed my arms before I could reach it, stopping me. "What is that?" Mary asked in shock.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
What would happen if I picked up this knife and stabbed you right now, by Ekro? That's what my wife said to me after we'd finished eating the lovely meal she'd prepared and polished off a bottle of wine. "Your martial arts skills. Please. You went for like 6 months. I hope nothing. As long as you stay on your good behavior, you have nothing to worry about." My mouth was parched, so I quietly got out of bed and slipped downstairs. The vinyl floor in the kitchen shocked me further awake. Opening the fridge, the light poured out and a quiet hum emanated from within. I pulled out a jug of milk and chugged. I loved downing milk straight from the bottle. I stood for a moment, then a glint from the metal blade of the bread knife caught my attention. I thought about what she said and laughed it off, before that voice in my head said, "What if?" You know that voice, it's the one that tells you to not get too close to the edge of a tall building because, just maybe, why don't you jump? I hated that voice. It always wanted to undermine me. It's the one that told me that everyone was going to laugh at me when I make presentations. That voice that tells me I'm a failure, that I'm a fraud, no one loves me. Usually I'm confident enough to ignore it, it's pushed to the back of my mind with all those thoughts about winning the lottery. But that night, standing half drunk, in the dark kitchen, what if? I returned to bed, and pulled the cover over the top of me. Sam muttered to herself as her arm flopped on top of me and grasped my chest hair. She let out a nocturnal snigger. I could kill him, she said. Sam! I shouted. She awoke, startled. What's wrong? She asked. I sat at the dining table. Something was off. It was lost on me to start with. Like if someone had come into your house and rearranged photos and books, not something you'd recognize at first glance, but that lizard part of your brain is on alert. Did you cook this from scratch? I asked. Why? Do I have to have a reason? She poured wine into my glass and then into hers. What if she's poisoned your food? That voice again. I saw her face drop. That's because I love you, and you deserve more. I appreciate that, but can we swap? No, we can just swap. I prefer if I take some off your plate, it's easier. I drank some wine, as if stalling for time. Are you really going to eat out of politeness? The voice in my head said as I picked up the fork and plunged it into the beef. I placed it in my mouth and chewed. She told me what happened in her day, about a man called Ryan who was going for the same promotion as her. Slowly but surely, I continued to eat. Are you feeling a little off? I wasn't, I was fine, but that goddamn voice wouldn't shut up. I waited as she brought it to her mouth. I try to fight my own battles. But he's worrying me. I think we need some sort of defense, just in case. Why not? She snapped, do you want to see me dead? Suddenly she was staring at my food. You can keep it for later, I'll be hungry then. See? He's messaging me now. That's not appropriate, is it? No. She said, turning away from me. She held the phone to her ear. How many times do I have to tell you, I have a husband, he knows martial arts. She's crazy. I got up and walked over to her, placing my hands on her shoulders. She jumped with what appeared to be shock. Everything will be okay. I promise, she said, I'm a bit tired, I think I'm going to go to bed. Thank you. She pecked me on the cheek. Just in case, she said. No, it isn't, I said out loud, before putting my hands in front of my mouth. Nothing, honey. The voice was right. She hadn't. That wasn't normal. I felt more drunk than I should, and I didn't care. I sat down at the table and examined her glass. Surely there'd be a trace of lipstick, or a bit of food to show she had at least taken a sip. The room began to spin. I stabilized myself at the table, took a deep breath and made my way upstairs. I barely made it onto the bed before I passed out. I woke groggy. I realized quickly it was Sam who'd awoken me. Her arms were flailing. The bread knife held tightly in her far side hand. I'm going to kill him, she muttered. Sam, what's going on? It's you, you shouldn't be here. she demanded. She straddled me, holding my throat with her free hand, the knife held back behind her head. That's not true, I love you. I got control of the knife, and as soon as I did, her grip relented. In a flash the knife was on the floor and her body went limp. Christ, Sam, I said, slipping off her to sit on the side of the bed. The message light on her phone throbbed. I picked it up, to see 10 messages waiting from Ryan. Normally I wouldn't have cried, but she tried to kill me. One by one I scrolled through and saw the horror that she'd been keeping to herself. You should try that perfume out I gave you. I'm sure your husband would like it. You know the job's mine. That's okay though. If you do those favors I've been talking about, I'll take care of you. You don't have to respond. I know you are reading these. If you were with me, I'd treat you right. Like a princess. I didn't realize it was that bad. We need to go to the police. Sam. She didn't wake. I pushed her. Her body rocked back and forth. Moments later, a message came back. I knew you would. I'm outside. What about your husband? Without thinking, in a daze, I walked down the stairs, quietly unlocked the front doors, and entered the kitchen. I placed my head on the wood, feeling a burning sensation in my stomach. It was little more than 5 minutes before I felt the cold rush of air, as the front door opened. I waited until I heard his footsteps stalk the landing. Then I got up. He was standing in shock at the end of the bed, a mirror image of myself moments before. I had the presence of mind to call out his name, so he'd turn around before I plunged the knife into his neck. I placed her phone back on the night table, making sure it was clear of blood. Then I took out mine and phoned the police. I sat on the floor, in my wife's blood that had gathered. I held her hand, held on to the little warmth that was left. No, they won't, I said out loud. The voice, it was still there, but it was no longer mine, it was my wife's.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah, that's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
Don't Let It In, by Veristol. Growing up, my best friend was Matthew Ramsey. He was a year older than me but still in my grade, not because he was stupid, but his father had died when he was in the 4th grade, and for a few months Matt was having a lot of problems at home and at school. When he got held back and put in my class, we became fast friends, and it wasn't long before I was spending more time at his house than my own. His job there wasn't even interesting. Just handling requisitions and hanging out with his boss, who spent most of his time drunk or asleep. Still, he told us, when his boss was awake and not too far gone, he was a pretty cool guy. He'd tell Gene stories about the people up there, local histories, myths and legends. And it was from him that Gene had heard about the woman that would sometimes come to your door, asking to be let inside because it was so very cold. The way my boss told it, he was working at a weather outpost north of Anchorage when a big snowstorm came in. He had supplies for a few days, but by the 3rd night he was starting to get nervous. He'd lived up north for a few months by that point, but this was the first time he'd felt really trapped by the weather. Between the increasing snow and the isolation, he admitted to letting out a scream when he heard a knock at the door. My boss wasn't no rocket scientist, but he wasn't a fool neither. He knew no one was around for 20 miles or more, and the odds of someone being out in that kind of weather at night, it just made no sense. His first thought was that it was someone come to relieve him for some reason, but as he approached the door, he heard what sounded like a young woman's voice on the other side. This threw him off. There were no young female enlisted locally that he knew of, and the more he thought, he realized he would have gotten a message beforehand if someone was coming up tonight. So who could this be? Heart pounding, he answered. "Ma'am, who are you?" "I'm cold and lost. I got lost in the storm. Please let me in." It was so strange, but she sounded scared, and if he left her out there for much longer, she was apt to freeze to death. Still, 2 feet of snow had fallen since he'd cleared the front door earlier in the day. If he was going to get her in, he needed to go out there with a light and shovel and clear the way. "Okay. Give me just a minute and I'll be out there." He put on his outerwear and headed up the ladder to the roof hatch that was mainly used for accessing the equipment up top and when the snow got too high to use the main door. He told me it really was bitterly cold, the coldest he could ever remember it being, though some of that was because he was so scared. He told me that part of that was him being scared for the girl, but only part. He said another part of him could sense something wasn't right. That there was something strange and dangerous beyond just the oddity of a stranger out in the midnight cold. Said that was why he shined the light over the edge of the roof before he went down to clear the door. Jean gave me and Matt a nervous smile at this point, taking another sip of his beer before setting it aside. He said most of it was buried in the snow outside the door, but looking down he could still make out the top of something's body. Said it was huge, probably 500 pounds or more, with a segmented ivory shell like a lobster and furry white spider legs that sat tensed and ready, the highest arches like small drifts just breaking the snow's surface. The worst part though, was its head. Because it wasn't a head at all, really. Over 5 feet tall and upright, the head had a slim and delicate shape covered in what looked like a dark poncho or cloak. Jean glanced between us as he rubbed the side of his face. He said he could see a face in that cloak. A woman's face. The most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Shifting in his chair, he went on. But it saw him too. This look he got, it was all in a couple of seconds, and by then the thing had noticed the light shining down and turned that head that looked like a woman up toward him. He told me he'd been terrified by that point, frozen to the spot, and some part of his brain that was still working thought she would say something else to him. Try to get him to come down. He got going then. Made it to the hatch, locked it behind him, and got his gun ready in case the thing made it inside. Said he heard movement on the roof, but nothing ever tried to get through the door or the hatch. He stayed awake until sunrise and then he radioed for help, using the excuse that he'd gotten bad sick. Matt and I watched him wide-eyed and terrified as he gave a small laugh and shrug. And that was it, at least for the most part. They came and got him. There was no sign of anything wrong outside, and he never told anyone above him about it. Jean leaned forward toward the fire. Until one night he was in town drinking and he buddied up to one of the locals. They were swapping bullshit for a while, and eventually he got comfortable enough that he told the guy about what had happened up at the weather station. Told me his drinking buddy got real sober real quick. Told him he was real lucky to be sitting there able to talk about it at all. He pointed his finger at me and then at Matt. Now that might sound obvious, but it's actually a pretty useful thing to remember. Because the way I understand it, it can't tell the truth. And it's compelled to talk, to lure, to try and trick you into letting it in so it can get you. So if you ask it questions the right way, things it can't not answer and things that give away its lie, you can figure out what it is without ever opening your door. Jean sat back and gave a grin. I just hope nothing comes scratching at y'all's tent tonight. I hadn't thought about Jean in some time until 3 nights ago. Matt was diagnosed with leukemia at 14 and was gone 2 years later, and in the 20 years since I haven't seen or spoken to his family over a couple of times on the internet. And yet 3 nights ago, as I sat cold and panicked on the side of a dark road, Matt's uncle and that story came flooding back to me. But I was an idiot. When the car hit a patch of ice, I overcorrected and slid off into a ditch. I was on a highway, but it was the middle of the night in a snowstorm, and I hadn't seen another car for at least half an hour. I tried to get the car back out on my own, but all that got me was wet and cold. Cursing, I called for a wrecker, finally getting one the third number I tried. They were coming, but it would be about 4 hours based on the weather, my location, and the calls ahead of me. Looking at the gas gauge, I decided to run the car for just 10 more minutes to build up some warm air and then sit in the dark for a while to conserve fuel. Shivering, I tried to call the hospital to check on my wife and get her a message as to what had happened, but I couldn't get the call to go through. I had plenty of charge left, but where I'd had 3 bars just a few moments before, now I was down to 1 bar that flickered like a dying candle flame. As I watched, it went out a last time and then didn't return. Maybe if I turned it off and turned it back. I let out a scream and looked over at the driver's side window. Staring in was a small boy, his dark eyes wide with pleading terror as they met mine. "Please, mister. Please let me in." I could see what looked like snot frozen on his upper lip, and his pale blue lips were trembling as he begged me for help. My God, how had he gotten out here? I needed to get him inside, turn on the car again, and then. I suddenly had a distant memory spark in the recesses of my mind. The orange glow of a fire pit lighting Jean's face as he told us about something that hunted out in the cold and the dark. The liar. Swallowing, I smiled at the pale little boy staring in. "How did you get out there?" The boy stared at me for a moment. "My mom. She's got bad sugar and fell asleep. I couldn't wake her up. I went to get help, but he was crying now, pressing a small hand against the glass. What the fuck was I waiting for? I unlocked the car, but I still hesitated to open the door. I thought back to the story Jean had told. The thing was called the liar because it had to lie. It just wanted to trick you, but if you asked the right question, you could see through it. Taking a deep breath, I looked away from the boy. "What's your name?" "I'm Matthew. People call me Matt. Please let me in." "Are you a little boy, a little human boy?" The boy's eyebrows went up slightly. "Yeah. Of course. Yes." The boy's sniffling stopped as a hard, cruel smile curled up the corners of his mouth. "No." After a couple of minutes I got a cell signal back and checked on Peggy. She was doing fine so far, and they'd pass along my message that I'd be there soon. An hour later, the wrecker arrived, and if the man thought it was odd that I refused to get out of my car as he pulled me free from the ditch, he didn't seem to mind.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
What was the name of your childhood best friend? Incorrect answer. I tried first and last names. Nicknames. Last names only. Every time, the same message popped up, incorrect answer. I sat there, confused, staring at the screen. Skip this question, I clicked, finally. Franklin High, I entered. Incorrect answer. Skip this question, I clicked, and the next question popped up. Then I blinked. Did you receive a text just now, David? We're going to try to verify your account a different way. Enter the verification code we sent to XXX 1539. Everything is fine. I picked up my phone and began tapping at the screen, then jerked my fingers back. What is that? Something wet and dark coated the glass, sticking to my fingertips. Thank you, David. You're all set. So much blood, pooling out from something unseen in the family room. My heart beat painfully in my chest as I crept forward. The first name jumped out at me. David. I reached into my own pocket and pulled out my wallet. But I already knew the truth, now. I wasn't David. I'd done this. I remembered, now.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I found out a day of the week doesn't exist, by Ekro. My mind is still spinning to say the least. You do not expect your worldview to change so radically within minutes. I think the last time before today was when I was a child and I saw my mother sneaking into my room to put a Christmas stocking at the end of the bed. I was 6. Today I am 35, and this time with the benefit of years of knowledge and experience, it is much more dreadful, how much of my life has been a lie. What the fuck is validity? You mean, Monday? No. I mean validity. This guy, Pablo, he's a contractor hired to help us finish our project. He was there to churn out code, probably paid way more than us, and he'd be gone before we'd find out if he was shit. Pablo piped up and asked what we were vexing about. Stuart started laughing. The way he did this made me feel crazy. I mean, the nerve of the guy. So, it's Tuesday, fine, I said. Jesus, I didn't need that type of fucking with. Sorry about that, but it was fucking funny. Father almost gave me a heart attack when he appeared next to my driver's side window. He seemed amused at my fright scare. You ready? He asked. I followed him into the small outbuilding. It didn't matter how well we cleaned it, it always smelled of sharp metal. The odor that makes the back of your throat wince. What are you talking about? He said with a tone of whimsy. I felt stupid for asking. It was a ridiculous question. What day is it today? The gate to the pen swung open with a teeth-piercing screech. Nothing came running out. I sighed a little. I hated it when they fought. That wave of sickness hit me again. I have no idea what you are talking about, he said, dragging our dinner out of the pen. I can't have you not on your game tonight, you understand. I nodded and pushed my visor down before holding the arms tight. I was glad this one wasn't bitching and moaning. I hated it when they did that. I think, secretly, my dad liked it. He always said the harder you work for something, the more satisfying it is. I didn't really understand that. I'd been working damn hard in the office, and I'd feel no satisfaction when it was finished, just the relief it was over. Please, no, the creature whimpered. I hated it when they whimpered. Tell them that if they keep overworking you like that, then I'll be down there to turn them into steaks. I laughed at this. There was something funny about him standing there in overalls covered in blood. I did enjoy this time together. Even after my new revelation today, something so small, a day of the week I swore existed, didn't, it would take a while to get used to that. It's Wednesday now, I've checked, it is. At least I still had my normal, completely ordinary time with my father.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
My son vomits when he looks at me, by Dr. Strangelove 4242. I guess I should start with a little backstory. I'm a single father to a beautiful 3.5-year-old boy, I love him with all my heart and soul. His mother left with him when he was just a baby and refused to let me see him. I had to go through a lengthy and painful court case, but eventually I was granted joint custody. Then not too long afterwards his mother left and it was just us two. I stood up and tried my best not to add to the pile of vomit now forming on my bed. I quickly grabbed my son and took him to the bathroom. It wasn't until I tried to start cleaning it that I realized my son was in hysterics. Of course none of this is all that odd, he obviously just wasn't fully recovered and all the jumping around caused him to be sick, nothing unusual. That is, until I tried to calm him. He screamed and recoiled when I moved towards him. I tried to shush him gently and tell him it would all be okay, but the very sight of me seemed to terrify him. It just had no logical explanation, it defied the laws of physics, biology, nature. It was like looking at an impossible shape. Although it wasn't what I saw that was impossible. It was the fact I was seeing it which made no sense. I gently touched the pulsing gaping wound in my head and felt the spongy but firm decaying brain matter within. I've never felt a sensation as strange, my fingers sliding gently across the folds and curves of my brain. It looked almost as surreal as it felt. It was like a beaten blood-soaked sponge in my head, squeezing out thick red liquid at every touch. I realized I could feel a breeze inside my skull. There was an empty space at the back where some of my brain had been severed and was now dangling carelessly out the back of my skull. I traced the large crack from the top of my skull down toward my nose where the two halves of my face gradually met again. My left eye was bulging out and for a moment I considered trying to squeeze it back in. I knew it would be a futile gesture at this point though.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine. Stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
I love visiting my grandma. She always makes the food that I like, and in large quantities, and spoils me. With the hustle and bustle of college life, it's nice to go back to my childhood and allow myself to be spoiled for a few hours every few weeks. Even though she has 6 grandchildren, she made it clear that I'm her absolute favorite. She'd often have the whole family around for dinner, and after they left, she'd bring out the good stuff she made just for me. On Christmas Eve I arrived to my grandma's place and she greeted me like she always does, with a tight hug and lots of kisses. I barely even stepped inside when she started offering me food. She had already made what could only be described as an all-you-can-eat buffet. We dug in and once we were done, she showed me where I could sleep for the night. It was a cozy little bedroom, which apparently used to be my mom's room when she was little. I got up to grab a glass of water downstairs from the kitchen and groggily walked through the dark, trying to avoid any loud noise or turning on the lights, not to wake Grandma. I went downstairs and turned on the kitchen light, gulping down a glass of water. I glanced towards the living room at the Christmas tree and something caught my attention under the glow of the decoration lights. "Thank you for visiting me for Christmas, you made your grandma really happy. Now Christmas is a little different in this house than what you're probably used to, so it's very important that you follow these rules on the list. 1. Make sure to close your windows and ensure they are closed properly. These old windows don't work properly sometimes, so if you feel like cold air is coming in, let me know." I stopped reading and chuckled at the list. Grandma clearly wanted me to follow the basic rules for Santa like when I was a kid, but again I decided to oblige. I continued reading the list. 4. If you are woken up by the sound of scratching or knocking on your window, ignore it, your room is on the 2nd floor, there is no way to reach up to it. In fact, it's best not to look there, but if you see someone beckoning you, pretend they're not there. They may try to open the window from the outside. This is why it's so important to keep the windows closed. That was a mistake though, because when I looked down to the floor, at the light which was cast in from the window, I saw the unmistakable shadow in the form of a humanoid silhouette stretched across. I couldn't tell for sure, but it looked like whoever was there held both his hands on the window and stared directly towards me. I decided that the best thing to do is continue reading the list to try and distract myself. 6. If someone walks into your room while you're sleeping and you happen to wake up, pretend that you're still asleep. In the worst case scenario, the person will sit on the edge of your bed and observe you, so do your best not to let them know you're awake. If you feel their breath on your neck and it gets progressively closer, it means they realized you're awake. 9. Follow these simple rules and in the morning, we can open your Christmas presents. Grandma. I either passed out or fell asleep sometime later, but all I know is I woke up to the sound coming downstairs from the kitchen. I shot up, looking around the room and at the window, rubbing my temples and thinking about the nightmare I had. I left my room and immediately heard my grandma's voice calling me from downstairs, to come open the presents. I told her I'm coming, when I suddenly felt a grip on my wrist. I turned around and saw my grandma there, staring at me, wide-eyed. She leaned in and whispered in my ear, with a trembling voice.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
He sent me text messages as it started until the end of his life. I couldn't stop reading them over and over again, emotions overwhelming me in waves. I can't talk to anyone about this, not even my parents. This is a very personal matter. But I need to somehow let it out, and this Reddit community is the only place I know I can reach out to. That's why I've decided to transcribe my dear friend's last words to me here, completely unaltered. Andrew. 11:42 Hey dude, we have a stupid surprise lockdown RM. Andrew. 11:44 Ick, but the teachers are being super bitchy about it like they think it's a real threat, haha. They actually think their enthusiasm will make us care XD. Me. 11:45 Bro, they're always so annoying like that. Andrew. 11:52 I don't think this is a drill. They're talking about an actual intruder and I think I heard gunshots. Me. 11:55 Boy, you playing? Andrew. 11:55 No dude, I'm fucking serious. I think this is actually real. Me. 11:58 Andu, I really hope you're not just fucking around, this isn't funny. 12:07 Dude, answer me. Andrew. 12:11 Sorry, I was just asking around if anyone knew how long it would take for them to arrive. They said the nearest station is like 45 minutes away, but there's like a fucking accident and a roadblock on the way. Andrew. 12:14 I'm not. I wouldn't joke about this sort of shit. 12:17 If I jumped out the window I would break my legs since it's on the second floor and be a sitting duck. Andrew. 12:18 How do you think I feel? I'm fucking terrified. 12:21 Keep me updated, okay? I'll worry if you suddenly stop talking to me. Andrew. 12:27 WTF. 12:33 He's getting closer, I'm so scared dude, cred my messages, please be there, please, you're the only person I have. Me. 12:34 I hope you end up fine. 12:34 I'm worried and scared. Andrew. 12:40 Fuck, I think he's nearby, I can hear shooting really loud, fucking hell. Andrew. 12:41 I know. 12:49 You're my best friend, remember me.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
I'm a theme park mascot. Some kids just deserve to die, by J. Group. The costume I was forced to wear as mascot for Derby's Funland was not built for warm weather or user comfort. I was sweating profusely as I stood outside in the noonday sun, a silent prisoner in my oversized getup as I put on a fake happy voice, dancing and cappering with visitors. All the while, dying inside. The costume had the oversized head of a cartoon dog whose gaping mouth I peered out from within. The character wore a blue sailor outfit, a blatant rip-off of a popular duck character created by another brand, a fact which I was heckled for constantly. "Hey, Derby! Duck," a little kid yelled, tossing his hot dog at me and staining my costume yellow with mustard across the front. "Hey, asshole. My kid wanted a show, where do you think you're going?" "Whoops," I said, gritting my teeth and looking down at the obnoxious twerp who just branded me with mustard. "How do you Derby do, little fella? Are you having a great day at Derby's Funland?" The kid leered up at me, grinning a gap-toothed bully's smile. "Hey. My kid wouldn't do that. Don't blame him for your clumsy ass. Derby's a big fat liar. He wrecked my hot dog." A moment later the guy was attacking me, shoving me until eventually my manager had to come over, his face a frustrating mask of calm. "This punk ruined my kid's lunch, and now he's trying to blame him for it. I should sue you guys." "Sure, sue me for a hot dog," I thought in my head. Thankfully it had gone too far by this point and I knew better than to say it out loud. He pointed at the dad's red plastic cup of beer, nearly empty. The guy finished it off in one long swig and tossed the cup at a nearby trash can, missing completely. "Damn straight. Come on Skylar, we're VIPs, he slurred, before burping loudly. I'd seen this before. Some people tried to make a stink about everything, just to get free stuff. But this douchebag was taking it to another level. Even the kids seemed to be in on it. And they were gonna reward this behavior? Hell no. My boss looked over his shoulder at me with a glare that said he'd talk to me later, then escorted the two away into a secret door hidden behind a fake tree prop. The dark tunnel behind the fake tree was long and lined with ancient brick. It appeared to be as old as the park itself. Far up ahead I could hear the echoing voices of the man and his bratty kid, talking over my manager as he apologized. I hustled along to catch up with them. As I walked quietly through the dark tunnel, the sounds of hammering eventually stopped and were replaced by a different noise. It sounded like something heavy being dragged slowly over the cobblestones. Slow and deliberate. I pushed open the door and snuck inside. The room was dark and the sounds of a machine running could be heard nearby. My heart pounding in my chest, feeling sick and lightheaded, I crept towards those sounds. What I saw in that back room I will never forget. My manager dropped off the two bodies and walked right past me, out the door we had come in through. He didn't see me in the shadows, as I watched what happened next. I had no choice but to stay and listen to the sounds and to breathe in the coppery smells of that horrible room as he worked, first cutting up the father, then moving on to the son. If I left, I knew my boss would see me running out the back tunnel, and who knew what he would do if that happened. This dark secret of Derby's Funland was not meant for my eyes. As soon as I thought it was safe, I bolted out of there, being careful not to let the butcher see me. When I got back to the break room I collapsed on the couch. I needed to get out of there, to tell someone, but first I needed to rest for a moment, to process what I just witnessed. But before I could even begin to think, the door burst open. My manager and several coworkers came in. They all had their mouths full and were chewing, holding hot dogs. And my boss was carrying a tray loaded with the park's signature Derby dogs. Hey, sorry about earlier, buddy. But, guess what? It's Employee Appreciation Day. Free Derby dogs for everybody. Eat up. What could I say? Even terrified as I was, I'd forgotten to bring lunch and they smelled delicious. Hey, did you guys hear they make these things out of assholes? TCC. YT.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
At the sight of the lady with soft brown hair, haunting images of my 9-year-old self lying in a puddle of blood clawed their way to the forefront of my mind. I could practically feel the hideous warmth slide along my back as I recalled the way that thick, red trail slowly spread itself across the kitchen floor like an ink stain. Back in the present, painful tingles raced along my left thigh as the lady eased herself onto the bench alongside me. Before us sat a huge pond filled with ducks, geese, and a few swans. No, I mumbled. You work on the high street then? After studying my face more closely, she said, "Are you feeling okay? You look a little flush." "Michael," I answered, then immediately kicked myself. Wasn't there a rule about revealing your identity in these situations? "Pleased to meet you, Michael. I'm Mary." After tossing some more crumbs out, she brushed stray morsels off her lap, stood, said goodbye, and finally started along the path toward the rear exit of the park. Those marks were proudly on display as I rummaged through the fridge for a beer. "Nice walk?" she asked. I didn't answer. "I'll pay for it," I said. "I've got work to do," I finally yelled, before slamming the door behind me. All afternoon my eyes strayed toward the bookshelf on my right-hand side and, by nightfall, I'd barely made any progress on the designs. I went upstairs and heated a casserole, which I ate alone. Exactly 1 week later, just as I finished my tea, a familiar voice from behind said, "Why hello again, Michael." "This seat taken?" she asked, already circling the bench. I nodded for her to join me. "I'm good," I said. "Work's a little stressful." "What do you do?" "I'm an architect." "I'm grand. Just finished work and thought I'd take advantage of the sunshine." "I'm a seamstress." "So tell me about yourself. You got a family? Kids?" My wedding ring felt suddenly tight, just then. "A wife and daughter." "Oh, same age as my son, little Mike. Maybe they go to school together." "I don't think so," I answered sharply. She shot me a confused glance before saying, "It's a wonderful age, huh?" A slideshow of the endless parent-teacher interviews about my daughter's attitude problems flashed before my eyes. Definitely. Mike's going through a superhero phase right now. Everything's Batman, Batman, Batman. I'm taking him to that new film tonight. "Michael?" Mary said, alarmed. "Are you okay?" She placed a soft, reassuring hand against my forehead. For a moment nothing in this world could have hurt me. Mary sat back, her eyes slowly scanning me from head to toe. "Are you sure we haven't met before?" I shook myself alert. "No. And I'm fine. Honestly." "Batman, Batman, Batman." I snatched my cane and pushed myself up. "Wait." She spun toward me. "What's today's date?" "The 23rd. Of?" She cocked her head to the side. "I've been working so hard I lost track." "June." "Michael, are you sure?" I threw up a hand and forced an awkward laugh. Just kidding. I could work it out from what she'd already told me. / A police car sat parked in my front driveway. After sleepwalking through the inevitable conversation with 2 officers, I repeatedly promised my daughter would receive punishment for the crank calls she'd made, then I rushed into my office and scanned the bookshelf. On the second row sat a little brown diary with 97/98 scribbled along the spine. Isn't it weird how some teachers are out to get you? This one time I really needed to pee, but she wouldn't let me go because I hadn't finished my history exam. I thought about going all over her desk for fun. I suppose I shouldn't write things like that. If Mom finds out, she'll get mad. Anyway, there's no point having a grudge since Mrs. Silverstone is old and will probably die soon. Mom and I had a small popcorn at the cinema. I asked her her favorite part of the movie and she said George Clooney, that's the guy who plays Batman. I thought that was a dumb part of the movie to like more than an ice gun. I sank into my leather chair, past events crashing over me like a wave. Mary planned on taking her son to see Batman and Robin on June 23rd, the same day I went as a child. There had to be a perfectly logical explanation for this. Maybe I glimpsed the release date on Wikipedia and my subconscious filed this information away to use in a stress-induced hallucination. That evening, my wife threw me sour looks from across the table as our daughter made a big show of not eating her beef stew because it tasted worse than pickled dog shit. / Well prepared for her next arrival, I asked how Mary was doing before she'd even sat down. You're in a chipper mood, she said, before making the birds swarm our feed by tossing out breadcrumbs again. I was starting to worry, you seemed a little zoned out last week. The 2 of us made idle chatter until, finally, she said, and how's your daughter? Jane, right? She's an angel, I said, through gritted teeth. You should see Mike these days. Last week I told him we'd have to buy a new school uniform soon and he threw a big strop. He's been moping about the house ever since. Her hands shot up in protest. Oh no, I couldn't. You can and you will. It'll only gather dust otherwise. She sighed, clearly touched by the kind gesture. Thank you. / I got a new Batman toy. Mom said it's from her friend and that I had to write him a thank you letter. I almost forgot, the other day Mom and I went to see George of the Jungle. It was probably the 4th or 5th best movie ever. It wasn't as good as Batman though. I'm pretty sure Batman could beat both George of the Jungle and Wonder Woman in a fight. I needed to warn her. That day kicked off a downward spiral that ruined both our lives. But this phrase kept turning over in my mind, butterfly effect. One small change that results in big differences. If I tugged on a 20-year-old thread, what might unravel in the present? I flicked to August 5, 1997, 3 days after the incident. The act of saving her should have been a no-brainer. However, it came with a catch. I opened the diary marked December 13th. January 15, 2013. In other news, I saved a life. On my way out, I asked about the lady who got in the car accident. When I explained I'd found the wreck, they let me speak with her. Her face was more stitched up than a voodoo doll and she'd clearly been given a mountain of painkillers, but she remembered who I was. Her name was Diana. I offered her my sympathies then came home. I don't know why I'm writing this rather than going straight to bed. It's been an incredibly long, incredibly shitty day. I sat there, lost in thought. The paramedics told me Diana would have died right alongside her father if I hadn't arrived in time to stifle the bleeding. However, if Mom never got shot and developed a compromised immune system, it's extremely unlikely I'd have been racing along that highway on January 15th. If I don't happen across my future wife, she doesn't survive the crash, then she never comes over to thank me after her recovery. That means the two of us never bond over the shared grief of losing a parent, which in turn means we never raise the little bundle of joy known as Jane. Cheerful as ever, Mary sat next to me on the bench. Afternoon. Quickly I cleared my throat. There's something I need to tell you. She handed me a card from my past self. It said, "Thank you for the Batman, it's the best present I ever got." Beside the message, he'd drawn a crayon-caped crusader. "That's sweet," I said, dimly recalling the day I wrote it. After a heavy sigh, I made my voice all serious and said, "Mary, please listen. Remember that first time we met, when you said I looked familiar? There's a reason for that." I paused. As the wind gusted, leaves scattered across the ground like lost memories. "This is going to sound crazy, but you're my mother." "Have you come down with another fever?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. She got up to leave. "Nice chatting with you." My arm shot out to snatch her handbag, but she ripped it away then. Now on high alert, she made a desperate break for the path. Tears formed at the corner of my eyes as I nodded and said, "It's me." Every breath became a battle. It felt like trudging through a bowl of Mom's hearty beef stew. The universe didn't want me chasing her into the past. If I kept on like this, what might happen to me? "There's something I need to tell you," I rasped at her, back in the park. A desperate lunge brought me close enough to grab her arm. She shrieked. Tremors pulsated through my feet, the vibrations so intense they made my teeth chatter. The universe kept warning me to stop. Would it kill me if I went any further? Only one way to find out. As I crawled back toward the bench like a commando, that horrible sensory confusion evaporated. Quickly the park compressed back to normal. My lungs opened up. By some miracle, I'd survived. Now I'd never get that goodbye. I returned home in a trance, only snapping alert when I walked up the driveway and saw the house I grew up in had magically acquired an extra story since I departed. Glass-fronted bedrooms now faced out onto the street. After double-checking the address, I hurried through the door, into the kitchen, and gasped at the sight of two strangers, a woman and a girl, at the side of a kitchen island. Every surface had a gray, granite finish. I watched the pair roll out dough. A moment later, the sweet aroma of chocolate, butterscotch, and brown sugar hit my nostrils. That woman's blonde hair and green eyes struck me as familiar, but from where? She was what I imagined a grown-up version of Helen might look like. Beside her, propped up on a little plastic stool, stood a 9-year-old girl, roughly my daughter's age. They looked quite similar, too. Except, she had Helen's nose rather than my wife's. The girl looked up at me with her big green eyes and said, "We're making chocolate chip cookies, Daddy." "Everything okay, hon?" Helen asked. She cleaned her hands using the front of her apron and then pressed one of them against my forehead. "You look a little flush." "Just tired is all," I rasped. "Maybe you should lie down." "In a minute." Now there was an entry marked August 2nd, 1997. / I sat back, flabbergasted. I'd done it. I'd successfully changed the past. Now I didn't marry Diana, I married the girl next door instead. From the top of the stairs, Helen creaked open the door and shouted down, "Don't forget your mother's coming over for dinner tonight." My heart soared. She'd survived. Things were still deeply, deeply convoluted. Two sets of conflicting memories occupied head space, but, piece by piece, I felt the old ones dissolve.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
There was nothing to prompt it. At 24, he was a good guy. He got top marks in school and uni, stayed clean, was very well built, and had only one girlfriend who he was still dating up until the time he went missing. I say, good, because he was horrible to me, and being a pathological liar and a master at manipulation, he got away with practically torturing me for years. He was 10 years older than me, and it never stopped. I got seriously injured from him up until the day he went missing. He always told me he hated me and enjoyed every bit of pain he put me through. I tried telling people when I was younger, but everyone believed him. Never me. Eventually, I stopped trying. The day he went missing was the greatest and most satisfying day I ever lived. His car was still parked in the driveway, his wallet and phone were on his desk, and his keys in the bowl by the entrance. Police had very little to go off of, it was like he simply vanished. After a year or so, everyone but my mom gave up on the search for him, figuring him to be dead. She, like any good mother, remained hopeful. He showed up early in the morning, dropped off by a mysterious black sedan with tinted windows in front of the house, according to our CCTV. We couldn't catch the license plate and had no idea where the car came from or where it went. My brother came out in the same clothes he went missing in, obviously well nourished and with his clothes clean, save for an old, blackened stain on his chest, which people assumed was from the chili he ate the morning he went missing, and dirt on his shoes. The huge mystery came when he knew absolutely nothing. His memory cut the day he went missing, and resumed the second he stepped out of the cab of the car. He thought he was still 24, and honestly he could have been. A time skip was not one of the more outlandish theories the town had, considering everyone seemed to nod in agreement to aliens. Of course, his room was the same. My mom made sure no one touched it when he left for uni, and when he came back and then went missing, she did the same thing. She was so convinced that he would return that she allowed no one to move anything. She was devastated and heartbroken, so my dad and I just went along with it. The first night he came back, he spent it in the house. My brother returned after going missing for 4 years. If he really came back, I'm in huge danger. I've always had my fun with you, but never got to finish the job, you little shit. The eyes. Although they were in void, the eyes were still visible somehow. It was as if they were emitting a soft light underneath the surface. They were glassy and glazed over, completely lacking blood and life. He was still wearing the same shirt and pants he went missing in, and the stain on his shirt looked menacing in the light. It looked oozing, pulsing, crawling, as if filled with worms and maggots. His hands and arms were at his sides, swayingly gently with rage. In his right hand was a knife that looked sickly familiar. I knew that knife all too well. He moved his arm to hold the knife above his head. He lunged toward me from the end of the bed, before I could form any words or sights for help in my mouth, and just as the knife was about to plunge into my chest, I woke up. I jolted in my bed, sitting upright, blood pumping with icy cold liquid coming from a heart frozen in terror. I felt cold and hot at the same time, feeling nauseous and shaking everywhere. I began to feel bile forming in my throat, so I moved my feet to the side of my bed to go to the bathroom. That's when I noticed it. My brother returned after going missing for 4 years. If he really came back, I'm in huge danger. I stood there, still frozen before the fight or flight response kicked in. The thought took only a nanosecond before I ran for the back door, prepared to make the journey on foot. I pushed out of the door and started to run for the woods. Yeah, I know that's a horror cliché, but it's what I did. I heard the door open behind me and knew he was close on my heels. I felt the familiar déjà vu feeling as I realized the events were almost exactly the same as the night he went missing. He chased me then too. He didn't have a knife then though, he thought his fists would be enough. He was wrong.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I am looking for a human host, by the secret pie. Am I asking to control your body? Yes. Sometimes. You'll still be there, but taking the back seat. Now you're probably thinking, that sounds no fun. I don't want to spend all my time riding shotgun. And that's valid. But you all spend about half of the day unconscious anyway. Your body is just there, doing nothing, a complete waste. As for me, I don't sleep, so we could have it so that during the day, I will graciously let you do fun human things, and at night, I'll do whatever. And by whatever, I mean perfectly safe, perfectly reasonable activities. I don't drink, and I rarely go outside. I enjoy baking, I look at pictures of birds online, I've been getting into neuroscience lately. Very interesting stuff. You're all very interesting. And should anyone question me, I'm not bad at impressions. I'll get really good at a you impression, it'll be the first thing I do. Now I should say, I don't have a lot of standards, I really don't. But I do, unfortunately, have some, so let's just get them out of the way before I waste your time. A strong immune system, yes, I know what I just said, but I also don't want to be attacked by your immune system. So maybe you're not the picture of health, but you're just kind of okay. I'm looking for someone who is just kind of okay. A name that starts with a P, I'm not the greatest at speaking. It's hard, moving air through your throat and moving your tongue and your mouth at the same time. You all do it so easy, can't say I'm not envious. I'm the worst at making the P sound. I intentionally avoid any P word in conversation, and get by well enough, but I'll look pretty foolish if I'm cavorting about, pretending to be you, and I can't even say your own name. I don't care if you don't have a lawyer. There are so many things that I don't care about. Now, I've specified all the ways in which I could compensate you and how our relationship will be not in any way problematic, but I want to stress that, above all things, I am looking for a friend. Someone I can spend quiet evenings with. If you want to hang out with me during the day, that's great. I can give you fun hallucinations. Or you could have hallucinations the normal way, like by reading, like what you're doing now. I love to read. I love doing funny voices. I wonder what you think I sound like. I hope I sound nice. But then I met this sweaty man in a colorful t-shirt, with a camera, and half a granola bar, and with blood so hot. He was a bird watcher, if I recall correctly. Just watched birds all the time. I thought it might have been out of jealousy, watching those little things flying around makes you feel kind of stuck. I felt stuck. I'm totally over it though, haha. After that incident, I got kind of depressed, but I was too much of a coward to do much about it. I possessed a lot of trash animals, gulls, raccoons, and salespeople. I did what I could to survive. That's kind of where I am now. But I'm a real hoot. Winking and laughing. So. Please. If you are interested, leave your comments below. I would love to get to know you, smiley face. I need to go now, the library is closing soon, but I'll get back as soon as I can. Edit, just borrowed someone's mobile device and also fingers, so I can now respond. Edit 2, my name is James now. Edit 3, so many friendly replies. My prior experiences have not led me to believe that so many of you would jump at the opportunity of being possessed. Judging by your responses, learning to make banana bread was the single best decision I have ever made. To be sure, I will respond to and consider all of you, but I'm a bit overwhelmed. How can I pick from such a smorgasbord of potential lives? Anyway, I'm thinking I might become a bit of a swinger, just to try new things, rather than commit to one partner. I want to know how you all think. How you all feel. I want to know everything.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
We've just discovered the most bizarre virus, by Mr. Outlaw. Alright, long story short, my name is Cam and I'm a virologist. If you've never heard of that title, it's just a person who studies/researches viruses and any biological agents resembling them. It's a decent job. Pays well and keeps me interested. I've never really thought about pursuing anything else. He looked like absolute shit. There were heavy bags under his eyes and scratches all over his face. He was jittery as all hell and could barely string together a coherent sentence. As we would learn later, he was never actually on vacation. I guess you could say that it was more like a business trip of sorts. That's when I noticed that the bird was actually blindfolded. I don't know why I hadn't earlier. Why nobody had even pointed it out. I guess my subconscious wasn't expecting such a bizarre sight. Are you kidding me? Jake inquired. How does that work? Wait, what the hell's even wrong with the bird? I found myself blurting out. Although, it was a fair question. Upon initial glance at it, nothing at all seemed to be off. The only somewhat strange thing was that it hadn't moved much. Hathaway sighed. Not at first, right? He dug around in his bag and pulled out another, smaller tank. It was filled with beetles. We'll do a demonstration here. He walked over to the bird tank and dumped all of the beetles in. Jesus Christ, I heard somebody mutter from behind me. Once Hathaway was finished, he turned back to us. His expression at the time was dead serious. In the gravest tone that I'd ever heard come from him, he spoke to us. I'm about to take the blindfold off of the bird. Whatever you do, don't look at it. In fact, just leave the room. I'll tell you when you can come back. I can't even find a way to describe them. They couldn't have come from a bird, that's for sure. Or at least, they shouldn't have. If anything, it was like a screech, except extremely deep and guttural. And also, somehow discombobulated. A few seconds later, we heard Hathaway screaming expletives. It sounded like he was in pain. We stood there frozen, not knowing at all what to do. Eventually, we were called back in. Hesitantly, I went first. You think I don't know that? Hathaway interrupted back. Just listen, alright? Anyways, there aren't any immediate indications when something's been infected. They'll act exactly the same as they were before. At least at first. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when they start changing. I'd say maybe 3 hours, tops. But once they do, you notice. The best thing you can do is to blindfold them. That way, you can't get infected, and the subject loses all of its symptoms. Well, I suppose that the best thing to do is to actually blind them, but I had to demonstrate first. Now we just have to figure out what the hell's actually going on. However, Hathaway insisted that the only way this virus could be transmitted was by eye contact. As strange as this all was, we just went along with it. His reasoning for dissecting the brain first was that he'd made the assumption that this virus must be affecting the host on a mainly psychological basis. As it turns out, he was right. Once the brain was exposed, we noticed something truly inexplicable. Something was moving around in there. We all turned to Hathaway, hoping for further explanation. "It's a parasite?" Beth asked, looking mortified. Hathaway shook his head, looking incredibly confused. "No, it shouldn't be. The bird's been alive for weeks after infection. I see no signs of physical deterioration, no nutrient deficiencies, none of that. It looked absolutely alien. It nearly resembled a bacteriophage, except for the fact that it seemed to have tiny suction cups covering it. The head also appeared to be partially mechanical, with tubes protruding out and connecting to the legs. It was about the size of a black widow spider." I heard a cacophony of screams ring throughout the room, while Hathaway shouted at me to not let it out. As everything started settling down, we managed to transport it into another glass tank, this time smaller and more fortified. We spent the next 12 hours observing and analyzing it. The conclusion that we came to? It made no fucking sense. We couldn't classify it nor make sense of its various parts. Hell, the thing was too fucking huge to be any kind of pathogen. We would have written it off as some kind of undiscovered jungle creature, but the fact remained that it seemed to affect the behaviors of its host organisms. However, Hathaway declined that proposition. I remember lying in bed that night when a troubling thought creeped into my head. If the way that this virus was transmitted was by making eye contact with an infected organism, then wouldn't looking directly at the virus itself cause something similar to happen? How the hell would that even work? Did it replicate through our thoughts? Or did it need to control optical nerves in order to spread? How could that even make sense? But then again, none of this really did. However, I did recall Hathaway claiming that symptoms would surface 3 hours tops after the initial infection. It had been a hell of a lot longer than that. Being somewhat reassured, I passed out. I looked back at the tank in abject confusion. There weren't any cracks on it or anything. There was no feasible way out. My thoughts were interrupted when we heard a knocking coming from outside the lab door. "Hello?" A voice called out. It was Colin. I got up to open the door, but Hathaway pulled me back down. Well, he woke me up when he walked past my door. Actually, I think he was standing right outside. Yeah, he was mumbling something. I opened the door and asked him what the hell he was doing. It was dark, but I could tell that he was just staring at me. And then he started rambling. It was absolute nonsense. He was stringing words together, but none of it made any sense. Hathaway and I exchanged worried glances. If Jake really was infected, then so was Colin. We didn't move. Shit, tell me that Jake wasn't infected. Hathaway just sighed and shook his head. I don't know. I'm sorry. We heard him shout some more expletives before walking away, fuming. We sat there for a while after that, having no idea what to do. No, but it wouldn't matter anyways. We can't let those guys out of here. I've yet to see what effects it has on a human, but it can't be anything good. And don't even ask me about a cure. I don't know. So what are you saying? I asked him, dreading the answer. Best case scenario is that we blindfold and restrain them before they show any signs of aggression. He sighed, looking down at the ground before continuing. We walked down various corridors for about 5 minutes before we heard a soft voice to the hallway left of us. It was Jake. This is roughly what he was saying. In time, we're in time. It doesn't make sense. I know that it doesn't. So what do I do? I can't stay like this. I saw him. I saw his face. When I peered over, he was lying on the floor, staring right at me. Fuck. I stumbled backwards, horrified at this sudden revelation. Don't worry, he told me. I'll take care of Jake, and then I'll take care of myself. Just go find Colin. And be more careful than I was. What's going on? She asked, sounding terrified. She let out a near whimper. No, why? Oh God, don't tell me. Fuck, well, I haven't made eye contact with Colin, alright? I didn't know how to react, so I just froze there. Eventually, Beth started speaking again. Is that a tranquilizer gun? Because that won't do anything. Before I could even react, she lunged at me. I closed my eyes as I felt her nails dig into my skin. And then into my face. She was trying to forcefully pry open my eyelids. Luckily, I had about 90 pounds on her, so I managed to throw her off of me. The whole time she was assaulting me, she was letting out some kind of extremely deep, throaty chuckle, as opposed to Jake's boisterous hysterical one. As I bolted out of there, I could hear her coming after me, still letting out that disturbing chuckle. The weirdest part was that I could also hear her palms hitting the floor. Was she fucking crawling? I didn't try and find out. I ducked into an adjacent lab and locked the door behind me. I heard her clawing at it from outside, so I just lied down on the floor for a while in order to catch my breath. God, she was still fucking laughing. What the hell was going on? Wait a minute. I thought. The laughing was too loud. It sounded like it was coming from in the room. Hesitantly, I checked the door. I nearly had a heart attack at what I saw. She was halfway through the damn door. But it was still closed. I could see her arms and face poking through the metal. Safe to say, I left immediately. Thankfully, there were 2 doors in the room, so I ran out into an adjacent hallway. I tried thinking about it. Had it been 3 hours since our encounter with Jake? Surely, it hadn't been. I guess he eventually heard me, because he shifted himself towards my direction. Right after he said, a loud roar emanated from some corridor behind me. It was followed by what sounded like rapid crawling towards our direction. I got into my car and sped down the mountain trail, back onto the highway. I got home about 30 minutes ago and I have no idea what to do. Should I call the police? Are they even going to listen to me? What about the FBI? Surely that's the best option here. I'll probably end up doing that soon. That virus cannot spread more than it already has. Wait. I made eye contact with her, didn't I?
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
Park Ranger warning you to stay safe and leave your flashlights at home, by Julia Tekohodl. Let me tell you about the last park I worked. I can't be too specific about the location for my job's sake. Anyway, we had clusters of campsites that we rotated annually. The idea was to prevent one group from getting overused and worn down, let nature regrow a little bit. The winter had just passed, and our big summer season was a few months away. I'm sent out to check the suitability of the campsites to decide which ones need time to recover, and which ones we can open up. While I wait, I listen. Silence. Silence in nature isn't good. Prey get quiet when they sense a predator. I hope all the birds are being still on my account. I've seen bears rummage through camps and destroy anything that looked edible. There are wild hogs here that cut trails through the deep brush and are even more dangerous than the bears. But this isn't either of them. The devastation here, it's just too much. Some scourge of God came through here and just ripped everything to pieces. Finally backup arrives, and I'm sent to report to HQ. They even brought medics out here. I don't know why, there's no one here to save. One of the new recruits vomits at the scene. I'm glad to get the hell out of here. Word comes down from on high. We're assigned a new manager, one who excels at what he calls crises. His first order of business, a controlled burn of the unauthorized camp and the sites closest to it. I'm not arguing, I watch the smoke rise in the distance and pray that's the end of it. A couple days pass, and we go out to collect the footage. The new manager takes it all and starts studying it in his office. A couple hours into reviewing, he freaks out. Starts screaming and yelling. Gets on the phone calling up the line spitting more obscenities. He spends the rest of the day and that night in the office, calling up specialists and planners. Next morning I show up for a meeting. Manager doesn't look like he slept. Massive changes afoot. He lays out our new plans, including massively bright lampposts circling the park border as well as floodlights around the ranger station. Campsites need to be moved even closer in. Clear lines of sight from the light, if possible. I butt in, telling him that defeats the point of going camping. If you're just going on a short walk through the grass then setting up so close you can see the parking lot. Now it isn't uncommon for rangers to carry an AR-15 or a Remington 870 shotgun going out in the deep woods. There are wild and rabid animals out there. The real concern are massive pot growers. These aren't your chill neighbor who hides a few plants behind the tomatoes. They run the spectrum from large-scale suppliers who like their privacy and dislike law enforcement to anti-government crazies who think we have no right over them, the true patriots. Both groups have a few common points. They tend to be well armed, they do not like lawmen, and they won't shy away from taking a pot shot at some dumb poor ranger who finds himself in their fields. Keep in mind Elliot Ness, Mr. I fought Al Capone and won, got scared off busting up Appalachian moonshiners because they constantly sniped at him in the foothills. They shoot to kill. Those are the reasons we keep the big guns around. Not routine patrols. I drew the short straw and got the overnight shift. Manager tells me more changes to protocol will be listed when I return. Overnights used to be easy. Monitor the radios, bust up the parties if needed, check for poachers if they're operating nearby, make sure the forest doesn't burn down. I clock in and per instructions, go to the gun cage. Things have changed. Next to the radio, there are new instructions. Now we're not allowed to directly respond to emergency calls. We can reply, figure out what the issue is, then we report to a new phone number I don't recognize. Time passes slowly tonight, I'm not even allowed to leave the building until sunup. A week later some kids roll into the lot. They grab their backpacks and start hiking up the ridge. I know what they're up to, no one has booked a campsite that night. Cheap young ones going on a campout that will be a raging party. I wait for the sun to go down, confirming they're not out for a day hike. I call my manager to report. He instructs me to call the new number. I report up to them now. A curt voice answers the phone. He asks my park, then pauses. He asks the issue. No. Do not leave the building. Do not attempt communication. That is all. Report if there are any developments. Right after daybreak the manager rides up. It's real early. No, the car's still there. Let them rest, they're probably all hungover. He curses, non-stop. He then goes inside to make a call. I'm outside looking up the ridge when he exits the station. The same curt voice. The same direct questions. Yeah, the manager went up to that campsite. Armed to the teeth, and carrying gasoline. What the fuck do I do? About the same time I start to see smoke wafting off the ridge. 2 vans ride into the lot at a screaming speed. A dozen men, heavily armed and armored, exit quickly. I go out to check. Which direction did he go? I mean, he's up there. I point at the increasing smoke. I try to shout after them, but no response. I look at the vans they came in. Large, nondescript. They just say, "DOI response team," on the side. They throw him in the back and sedate him. The commander approaches me, my neck hairs bristle in cold fear. I need to see the office. All computers and anything with a hard drive is coming with me. He mentioned videotapes. I need those too. I unlock the doors and they ransack the place. Everything gets taken. Printed reports from the last few years disappear into those vans. The videotapes get bagged up and held by the commander himself. He studies the gun cage. Call the number. Tell them it's contained. You need a new superior. Also, don't talk about this to anyone. They leave, and just on cue the fire brigade and a few news vans show up. The fire is contained, the news reports say. Rumors of missing campers are unsubstantiated at this time. Still, the rumors alone are enough to scare of this season's campers. The quick change-up of managers is chalked up to bureaucracy. The press dies down after a week or two. The new manager is very good at dealing with them. Thankfully, with no new campers and our now even shorter open hours, we can get more work done around here. Rebuilding the station took some time, and we just set up the new campsites. They're practically spitting distance from the station. Nothing dramatic happens for a few days. Then on a whim, the manager tells us to set up some cameras around the station and the campsites. There's usually so much human activity around here, all you see are some raccoons, maybe the rare hungry bear, but we humor him and set them up all around. Couple of days pass, we collect the footage. I play poker with one of the rookies while the manager watches hours of footage of an empty but brilliantly illuminated parking lot. Then he gets to the footage around the station. Screams come from the office. We barge in and he's stamping on the camera hard drives, gibbering things I can't understand. Along the lines of, "Told me it was clean, safe. No recent activity. Bullshit here, I'm not gonna do it." We draw straws for who gets overnight shifts. Why we need to stay overnight if we can't do anything is beyond me. I asked the manager about it and he just said that standard protocol is to have someone on hand to report any irregularities overnight. I get a phone call at 3 a.m. It's him. "Get over here now. And bring guns." "Wah. You have a damn arsenal." I hear the piercing staccato of gunshots. A pause. More gunshots. Screaming. Scuffling. The line goes dead. I call the number. A new terse voice answers. "Look, I work at Park. I just got off the phone with Dot. I just spoke with. What can you report?" "Something bad happened. It's serious. I heard gunshots." "Interesting. Thank you for your report. The park is now closed. You will be reassigned. Goodbye." I get transferred to a new park, halfway across the country. Change of scenery and beautiful. They've got some odd rules here too. Don't go far after dark, and don't carry a flashlight. Be safe, everyone.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I've been living in this apartment for 2 years now. 2 years without any weird shit happening. 2 normal fucking years. Has it been the best living experience ever? Probably not. I've dealt with everything from ants to rats to noisy neighbors, to police sirens in the middle of the night. Hell, the lady in 3A came home to find her apartment broken into a couple weeks back. All those things pale in comparison to what's been going on lately. There's some fucking weird shit that's been happening for the past couple of weeks, and it all culminated in me firing my gun last night at a girl that keeps fucking showing up in my apartment. That's a little drastic, you're probably thinking. And stay there, I yelled sternly. I never believed in that supernatural mumbo-jumbo, so it never occurred to me something else might have been moving the bowl. I just figured since I hadn't had my morning cup of coffee, my brain was glitching out or some shit. The next day, I came back from the gym in desperate need of a shower. I usually hop in the shower at the gym, but the goddamn water main exploded or some shit, so I had to drive home enduring my own sweaty stink. So, anyways, I got home, jumped in the shower, and turned it on real hot and soothing. I like my water practically scalding hot. Like, part sauna, part shower. Steam trickled out of the bottom of my shower. Except the room was empty. I got even more pissed off when a neighbor came knocking on my door, scolding me for all the banging. I tried to explain what I was doing, but when I invited her in to try and pinpoint where the music was coming from, I realized the apartment had gone quiet. I apologized, figuring whoever was making the noise had gotten my message and quieted down. I crawled back in bed and wrapped my comforter tightly over myself. Phew, I groaned. Imagine my surprise, or rather, my shock dash, when the TV turned on again. I'm not going to lie. I did kind of flip through the books real quick. Enough that I could feign a bit of knowledge without actually having read any of them. Enough that I could bag myself a sexy lady that night. Once the party was over, I hosted a private little book club between the covers. If you know what I mean. And then, there was 2 days ago. I was standing in my kitchen, annoyed by another session of take the coffee mug out and find it missing, when I suddenly spotted my mug across the kitchen. It was in the hands of a transparent-looking figure. She looked at me. I looked at her. She dropped the mug. It crashed on the ground and shattered into pieces. I had to clean up this fucking ethereal being's goddamn motherfucking mess. Last night was the worst incident yet. I'm not going to lie, I went to bed drunk, and I might have still been a little drunk when I woke up in the middle of the night. But look, drunk or not, I know what I saw. It doesn't matter how much alcohol you ingest, you don't hallucinate turning over in bed and seeing someone lying next to you. You might forget who's lying down next to you when you go to bed, but you don't just imagine someone that wasn't there at all. Point being, I woke up for whichever reason. Maybe a car horn outside, maybe my upstairs neighbors were trampling on the ground again, or maybe someone was throwing a party again, it doesn't matter. I'm a light sleeper, and I woke up. I don't know what's going on, but it's freaking me out. Does anyone have any advice? I don't believe in none of that supernatural crap, but I swear this shit happened. I can't explain it. I need help.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
You ever see an opportunity, and think, that's too good to be true? Read through the fine print, find out more about it, waiting with bated breath for when it turns out you're right? Here's a piece of advice I'll give you, I'm sure you've heard it before, I did too yet here I am now, when something seems too good to be true, it is. Let's go back to earlier today. There I was, switching between browsing Reddit and flipping through local job offers, when a refresh of a local job listing site revealed something new that caught my eye. A basic security position. Job description basically amounted to locking the doors at night, watching cameras, and calling the company if anything bad happened. And in the description, they said that they would pay $37 an hour. I was immediately skeptical of the high wage for a basic security job, especially considering the company had next to no info on it on the web. Their small website had pictures of the founders and outside of their buildings, but didn't even say what they did. However, I had the qualifications from a class I'd taken a year ago, and the possibility of walking away with $300 for a night's work seemed enticing even if it might have been a scam. I figured it couldn't hurt to send in a resume and see what happened. This is, I work for, Company, Inc. I'm Daniel Edwards, head of SEC, head of HR, former head of security. I'm calling because you submitted an application to us. Daniel paused. I waited expectantly for him to continue, but when the silence dragged on a moment too long I realized he was done speaking. What about my application? Oh, we'd like you to come for an interview. Your credentials looked good, yeah. Can you come to address in 2 hours? I was surprised. It seemed to me like either A, it was a scam, or B, they needed the position filled fast, maybe even by tonight. If it was the latter, I was pretty sure I could talk them up to an even higher wage, so I made my decision there. I'd check out the address on Google Street View and see if there was any other info on it before I went there, and if it seemed off I just wouldn't show up for the interview. Sure thing. Thank you. Daniel hung up the phone before I even finished speaking. After waiting for a minute, a man rushed in through the front door. I didn't like how aggressive he was being, but it had showed that I was right. They were looking for a fast, probably temporary hire, and I wasn't about to turn down that kind of money. I flipped through the NDA. It was a long one, so I skipped most of it, but I know how these contracts are, don't disclose company secrets, yada yada. I signed it and followed Joshua to the security office. What's this binder for? I asked, pointing at a white binder on the desk, bearing the company logo. I assumed my security guard role right away. I went outside and locked the gate, closed the metal shutter over the front glass, and locked the front door. Then I sealed myself in the security office and opened the binder up. Update 2:03:30 a.m. Demon Coffee disappeared after being left outside the door. I heard something knocking and scratching at the door during the time I was told to keep it closed, though I wasn't able to see it on the cameras. The only one watching the office door started showing the long hallway and I had to turn it off. There's a persistent shadow in the corner of the room, that seems darker than a normal shadow. It doesn't go away even when I shine my flashlight right at it. The instructions didn't say anything about a shadow, so I'm just going to not touch it and occasionally check to see if it changes size or moves or anything. Still haven't heard the woman's voice. I could have sworn I glimpsed a humanoid figure on the building 2 cameras a few times, though I can't find it when I inspect the feeds more closely. I no longer have even the slightest doubt that this place is haunted as shit.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I'm Never Shooting Another Snuff Film, by Theod Catlety. You don't start out shooting snuff. You build up to it. To be honest, I never thought I'd let it get that far. And I wish I never did. Eating nothing but ramen noodles and cheap mac and cheese is its own kind of misery. Not to mention being unable to go out and do anything with friends. I mean, I survived, but I was miserable. So when the chance to film a porno came up, I jumped at the chance. I told myself it would be just this once. I knew I was getting out of the realm of legal when I filmed a girl cutting open her arms and licking up the blood. I don't know what she was on, but she had to be on something to do this all while smiling and giggling. But that check felt so damn good, so I kept my mouth shut. I was finally in the black. I told myself no one made her do those things, so what was the harm in it? Then one day I was approached with a once-in-a-lifetime deal. I normally worked with my guy Charlie, he got all the hookups for the weird stuff. One day Charlie came over with this other guy I'd never met before who introduced himself as Noel. I shook Noel's hand and asked when I started. Instead, I quietly sat behind the camera and treated it like any other porn film. They took off her other arm and both legs, her struggles slowly fading and her eyes fluttering shut by the time they got through the final femur. Tommy and Gabe stood, bowed to the camera like they were on stage for a play. And cut. I had to run to the bathroom after that. I vomited for what felt like an hour. When I finally stumbled out, Noel handed me the rest of my payment. He patted my shoulder and helped escort me to my car. It's always hardest the first time. I bet you had dreams of filming the next summer blockbuster someday. He said. I didn't say anything, but I didn't need to. Noel just nodded. We all had dreams like that. Maybe if things turned out differently we would have been working on one of those blockbusters together. I'll call you when I need your services again. I told myself that I wouldn't pick up the phone again when Noel called. I did 25 snuff films in total. The money felt so damn good. And after a while, you really do become desensitized to it all. For me, it just felt like I was in a dream. A dream with gore and guts and horrible things happening to people, but it wasn't happening to me. I just saw it through a lens. I was out drinking with my fellow crew members when Noel came up with this darling blonde on his shoulder. I don't know how he did it as he was pretty average in appearance, but Noel could get the hottest women. Rhoda giggled and clapped. Noel tells me you are actors. She said, her Russian accent thick on her words. Cameraman. She cocked her head to the side. Is it fun? She asked. Rhoda was clearly drunk as she teetered around the set. She poked at the chains on the wall and smiled. Am I a captive in your scene, Noel? She asked. That sounds about right. Noel helped her into the chains, Rhoda's innocent dough-brown eyes looking excitedly around. This whole thing made me genuinely sick. It was one thing when they were terrified, begging for mercy and sobbing as they realized they were doomed. But the innocent expression on Rhoda's face, how clear it was she had no idea what was going to happen. I almost walked out then. Tommy snickered before he pulled on his leather mask. This is just too easy sometimes, he murmured to me. I just rolled my eyes. Lights. Camera. Action. Tommy twirled around the knife before sliding it down her front, slicing through the front of her dress. Rhoda whimpered and turned her face away. I'll do whatever you want. Please, take my money, use my body. She begged. The knife nicked her skin and I saw this brief moment of confusion before she began to struggle in earnest, realizing this wasn't just a movie anymore. Nyet. Unchain me. I don't like this game. Director. I don't want to play anymore. She shouted. The knife went into her stomach and her breath caught before she screamed so loudly I felt my ears pop. And cut. Incredible, Noel shook his head before he got up and threw Tommy a towel. You've outdone yourself. Tommy nodded before I heard a groan. Noel, can I go again? I can do better. The girl groaned before rolling her eyes and smashing her right hand against the wall. I heard bones crack before she pulled her mangled hand free. She did the same to the left before she began the impossible task of shoving her organs inside her mangled torso. Scene, sorry, your language is hard. When I hurt, she grunted as she popped her large intestine back inside. Scene would look better, covered in my blood. I can be cleaned, she looked up with a smile as she attempted to pull her skin together. An actress, Noelle. I want to be a very good actress. I was about to leave when Rhoda stopped me. Can I see? She asked, snuggling into the shirt she'd stolen from Tommy. Does it really hurt you? I asked. Rhoda nodded. It hurts like it would if it would kill me. But like I said, I want to be an actress. Will I be famous in these films? I can change if the director needs me to be a different girl. She looked so eager for my response. In certain circles, you'll be a star. I never want to film anything again. Especially one of Noelle's films. I wonder if Rhoda's starring in all his movies, now.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
I follow my ex-wife's Reddit account to anonymously give her awards, by lighting nations. Imagine my surprise when the #1 post turned out to be a mirror selfie of my better half. Glorious, golden curls surrounded her delicate features, and in the comments, she mourned the fact her proud lion's mane may never look that majestic again. Admittedly, I dropped the ball there. The rest seemed totally uncalled for, though. Don't even get me started on her contributions over on Dead Bedrooms. Let's just say the terms cold reptile claw and repulsive little slug appeared multiple times. She wasn't much of a writer, but her work had real feeling behind it, which made up for the poor technique. On the big day, Her Royal Highness unfurled a blanket stitched together from the old t-shirts. "Do you like it?" I asked. She came at me with a flurry of kisses. I gave her hand an affectionate squeeze and promised the celebrations weren't done yet. "I'm making a special birthday celebration dinner, your mother's spaghetti bolognese." I'd hoped that might mark a turning point in our marriage. But Maria couldn't even wait until morning to post again. "My jackass husband destroyed clothes with deep sentimental value. Had to wolf down partner's attempt at my mom's recipe. Good thing she's already dead, because this would have literally killed her." She lied straight to my face. I couldn't believe it. Because I couldn't keep my irritation bottled up inside, the toxicity from her posts soon seeped over into our day-to-day lives. Arguments about what to watch on TV would escalate until we both screamed so loud our faces turned purple, we'd side-eye one another for chewing noisily, and if we so much as brushed arms while lying next to each other in bed, icy-fingered jolts ran through me. Maria's attitude became more and more like her online alias. "My husband sleeps with his mouth open and it makes me want to throat punch him. It's so suffocating living with my SO. I swear, sometimes I could just slip a noose around his neck." In the comments, a tsunami of people agreed she married the most unbearable prick on planet Earth, possibly even the galaxy. One Redditor asked her to cheat on me and write a dissertation about the experience. In need of a good detox, I renewed my gym membership and went drinking on weeknights with high school buddies. Very soon Maria and I became strangers living under the same roof, homing in on an inevitable, messy divorce. As much as she'd hurt me, the memory of the love we once shared compelled me to at least try giving our marriage the kiss of life. I spent hours agonizing over a magical gift, one even the most cynical of Redditors couldn't trash. On the big night, a thick aroma of garlic and baking bed wafted out from down the hall, which set my stomach grumbling, already anticipating a nice, hot meal. With the sauce simmering on the stove, Maria disappeared upstairs and slipped into a form-hugging purple dress. When the door swung shut behind her, I sunk into my chair, mystified. The abrupt U-turn in her demeanor almost gave me whiplash. What spurred such a dramatic shift? I dreaded a tense evening full of snide, cutting remarks. I grabbed my phone and opened Reddit. I think my husband's on the verge of walking out. Intrusive thoughts keep telling me to murder my husband, and it's getting harder to ignore. These unhinged rants span 24 subreddits, half of which banned her due to threats of violence. Several dedicated followers encouraged her along this path. She'd officially lost it. Plunged off the deep end. Lost the last of her marbles. One post in particular caught my eye over inostopic questions, made the same night Maria suggested we have dinner. Just then, she came through the door carrying 2 plates and sent them down on the table. As she slid in next to me, a dry gulp seized my throat. Of course she wasn't poisoning me, how could I even think such a ridiculous thing? Just to be sure, though, I twisted some spaghetti around the fork, held it up to Maria's mouth, and insisted she take the first bite. You've worked so hard, you deserve it. Is something wrong? I asked, my heart doing pirouettes in my chest. I took a deep shuddery inhale. Honey, did you use any special ingredients? The knife came down in a shining arc. At the very last second, I held the gift box in front of my chest like a shield. The blade pierced the outer packaging, becoming wedged on the contents inside, and before Maria could wrestle the knife free, I threw my arms around her waist, scooped her up into the air, and dumped her on the wooden floor, hard. I pinned my wife down, my thighs pressed against either side of her chest. Unable to wriggle free, she screamed and thrashed and called me an asshole. I summoned the police who quickly arrived and arrested her, after a whirlwind of gaslighting and crocodile tears. Months have passed since that night. As part of the investigation, I shared Maria's posts with the detectives. From what the solicitor tells me, her sentencing won't come up for another 7 months, at least, and she's currently detained in a mental health facility. She gets 1 hour of supervised internet time a week, and wouldn't you know it, she channels this into Reddit posts about how I'm the worst husband who ever walked the earth, how she's going to beat the phony charges, and then expose me for the monster I truly am. And once a week, perhaps out of a morbid sense of lost love, I pour myself a large glass of wine, load up her profile, and dish out some awards. /
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun, and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I help people commit suicide, but they have to convince me to do it first, by her creation. I, 2, 3, 4, V, 6, 7, 8, 9, X, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I've worked a lot of odd jobs in my life, being something of a drifter in my adult years, but this is certainly the strangest one. I opened this business myself a few years ago after my own girlfriend committed suicide. She took a pistol and unloaded her brains all over our bedroom wall. Most people think that would make me want to stay as far away from death as possible, but everyone deals with their grief in different ways. Me, I thought I would give people a better option. I make people feel good, and then I put them to sleep. Really, I just don't want anyone to ever walk into their bedroom after a miserable shift at work and have to see what I saw that day. Oh, alright, I stammered, putting them on to shield my own eyes. You can go ahead and set your things down over there and take a seat. I motioned to the living area of my apartment. He dropped a heavy briefcase on the floor and moved towards the chair, but I stopped him. Sit on the couch, please. You'll want to be able to lie down if we end up going through with this. Did you bring me what I asked for? I inquired once he seemed fairly settled as one can be when they're seeking assisted suicide. Yes, he said calmly, reaching into the briefcase and handing over an envelope full of cash. Although, something tells me you're more interested in my story. I felt my face flush at this suggestion, because it was true. I guess I'm a little sick in the head myself, but the stories are far more important than the money. I need the money to live, sure, but the stories give me a reason to keep living, if that makes sense. If it's a story you want, young lady, then I've certainly got one for you. It might sound crazy, but I can assure you it is indeed true, he mused, running his fingertips along the lining of a couch cushion. Go on, I said, leaning into the conversation. Now, I've been seeing this patient for a few months, and she was really convinced something was terribly wrong with her. The lumps, she said, there were lumps forming in her axilla region, what the layperson calls the armpit. Normally that is some cause for concern for a woman her age, could be breast cancer, swollen lymph nodes, all that. I palpated the lumps, I found that they were squishy and mobile, not hard and fixed like one might expect if they were indeed cancerous. But she was absolutely inconsolable, and I knew I wasn't getting off easy. I scheduled her for an ultrasound, just so she could see for herself that there was nothing to worry about. Bodies grow lumps as we get older, you know. I thought of the cysts and skin tags and other abnormalities that had grown on my own grandparents, that will probably grow on me in the future. It didn't help, did it? He chuckled a bit. Hell no, it didn't. She came back right afterward. She just wouldn't accept it. It must be cancer, she said, they just can't pick it up for some reason. I looked at the results myself. I saw the lumps there, but they certainly weren't malignant. I figured they were just lipomas. Do you know what those are? I shook my head, no. I wish I had never done it. I don't have many regrets in my life. I have a beautiful wife, 3 kids. I've had a pretty good go at life so far, but, what saw me, it changed all of that. He sounded near tears at this point, but he collected himself enough to continue. Anyway, the day of the surgery came. It was supposed to be a quick, in and out type thing. She was sedated, and when I had her on my table, I briefly felt for the lumps under her skin again. I noticed the tumor had filled out a bit more, and it felt like it had that cluster-like quality that some lipomas get. When you open a lipoma up, you either get something like a neatly sealed package of fat, or you get what resembles a fatty bunch of grapes. Now those are harder to remove, and more likely to regrow, but still absolutely normal. The mental image of blubbery grapes dripping with grease made my stomach churn, but I signaled for him to continue. I had to know what he could have possibly seen in this woman's body that brought him to my couch tonight. When I opened her up, it was nothing like that. Not at all. Lipomas are fairly superficial, but I found myself wading through more connective tissue than usual. I finally felt the surrounding tissue give, and I used a probe to expose the mass. And then I saw it, them, whatever, I don't know. The growth was entirely composed of eyeballs. Small, twitching eyes, staring off in all directions. He illustrated this by using his fingers to point up and down, left and right. The pupils constricted immediately as they were exposed to the light of the operating room. And then they all fixated on me, all at once. He looked like he was going to be sick. I thought I might be, too. I've been wrists deep in necrotic tissue, I've seen all kinds of things that could turn a stronger man's stomach. But I'd never seen anything like that. I panicked. Instead of taking those things out of her, I just stitched her right up and sent her to recovery. I didn't even check in with her when she woke up. I just left. I contacted the hospital administrators, letting them know that I needed a break. Family emergency, or something. I don't think my job is waiting for me, he remarked, exasperated. Not that I want it anymore, anyway. Years of perfect surgical performance, and one operation has turned me completely mad. My behavior started to worry me about a week ago. I was taking a walk to clear my mind, to erase that image from my mind's eye, from my imagination, he corrected himself swiftly. I was walking down my street when I saw the local stray cat, this tabby I've just always adored. But when I saw him that morning, I was just filled with the most nauseating feeling of repugnance, because its damn eyes were so enormous. Glimmering in the early morning light, taunting me. "What did you do? Did you get away?" I cautioned. "I got away, that's for sure, but not in a way that I'm proud of," he offered remorsefully. Well, I pulled him into a little alleyway, and just stared at him for a good long while, my mind filling with confusion leading to rage. I was out of control at that point. I just took my thumbs and he made a popping noise with his lips. Popped them right out. I hate to admit it, but it made me feel better. Instantly. So far, yes. But I can't stop thinking about it. This obsession, it has consumed me. I can't look at anyone anymore, especially not my wife or my 3 girls. All I see when I look at them now is their eyes, distorted and magnified. It takes every ounce of my willpower not to take a spoon right to their eye sockets, just to end the madness. At that point, I think he started to cry from behind those dark glasses. You have no idea how hard it is, and I know I will never get better, because even though you're wearing those glasses, all I can think about is your eyes and how phenomenal it would feel to just force them right out of your skull. I squirmed a bit in my seat. It's not often that a client will indirectly threaten me like that. And I'm sorry for that, I'm so sorry, but it is the truth. Please, you have to help me, he sniveled. I was satisfied then. His debt to me had been paid in full. Please lie down on the couch now, I'm going to prepare the injection. The doctors were, please don't watch me as I die. I want to die in peace, and I know I can't do that if I know your eyes, if I know you're looking at me.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
The weirdest thing is that I never imagined this monster or whatever harming me in any way. It would always just lay on its side, watching me, with shining, unblinking eyes, and I would be too afraid to do anything, to move or scream. This helplessness that I would supposedly feel in an imaginary situation like that pretty much destroyed my childhood. And considering that I was raised in India, therapy wasn't even an option. But that didn't mean that my parents didn't try to get me over these fears. They tried sleeping next to me and sneaking out in the middle of the night, or sitting next to my bed and waiting until I fell asleep. But none of it worked. I would always wake up, sweating and scared out of my wits in the middle of the night whenever they tried this. I would then immediately scamper off to their bedroom, and wake them up by whispering how scared I was, almost giving them a heart attack in the process. On my 14th birthday, my parents finally put down their foot and forced me to sleep alone. I cried, I pleaded, tried to justify that I wasn't really a scared little boy and that my fears were rational, but none of it worked. And so I finally started sleeping alone. This is when I developed my strange rituals. Things changed the next morning. When I woke up, I found that my pillows weren't there. They were neatly placed, one on top of the other, on the side table. I initially dismissed this, thinking that I might have forgotten to place them next to me last night. I was actually quite happy with this, as it looked like I was finally getting over my fears. But this happened again the next day. And the next. And the day after that. All of the fears of my childhood were back, stronger than ever. I was back to staying awake like an owl, only dozing off for a maximum of half an hour or so each night. And the pillows would be gone from the bed every morning. It was hell. More.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
Don't let your children watch Mushy's Barnyard, by Real Spoopy Stuff. Somehow we both stayed calm. We agreed to check it out after Emma was asleep. We wouldn't even mention the flash drive to her until after we'd seen what was on it. That way we'd know how to approach her. Marcy led Emma upstairs and put her to bed around 9 o'clock that night. When she came back down 20 minutes later, I'd already plugged the drive into the back of the TV in the living room. She sat down next to me on the couch and we navigated to the correct input. There was only one folder, titled Mushy's Barnyard, on the drive. We clicked into the folder and 4 video files popped up. The thumbnail pictures for each video showed a cow hand puppet on a set which looked like a farm. Each was between 20 and 24 minutes long. Claire Wilson was Emma's best friend. She lived a few blocks down the road with her parents and older brother, Jason. From what I understand, Jason is a bit of a deadbeat. He's almost 30 and spends every waking second in the Wilsons' basement playing video games, smoking weed, and drinking with his buddies. What do you mean? I asked, starting to get worried again. Marcy chuckled. Not in a bad way, hun. Claire's probably been watching this Mushy's Barnyard on TV and telling Emma how good it is. And since we don't have cable anymore, she stuck a finger at me in a jokingly accusatory way. Emma can't watch it. Marcy stood up, stretched, the universal sign for time to go to bed, and continued. I'll bet they asked Claire's brother if he could help them and he downloaded it illegally. He probably told them how he got it and that's why she hid it from us. No results. The pit in my stomach grew deeper. The first episode continued as I remembered. Alphabet, colors, singing, dancing, etc. By the time there were only a few minutes left, the pit in my stomach was all but gone. I'd resigned myself to paranoia. But then it got weird. Time for my favorite part of the show. Mushy sang in a high-pitched voice. It's time to play, Let's Help Annie. Annie sniffled a bit and I saw the rope tighten briefly on her wrist, causing her to flinch. What the farmers want you to do, Mushy continued, is help them with their mouse problem. Mushy pulled out a gallon-sized plastic bag and laid it on the bench in front of him. All you need to do is catch a mouse. I like to use cheese or peanut butter, put it in a plastic bag, just like this one, and seal it as tight as you can. If enough of you boys and girls do that, then Annie will be just fine. After that, I watched the last 5 minutes of each of the other episodes, fast-forwarding until Annie came into picture. In each episode she looked skinnier and dirtier. Cuts and bruises appeared on her forearms and shoulders and by episode 3 she was limping. In each episode, when Mushy introduced the Let's Help Annie bit, he explained that not enough kids had done what the farmers asked. It was the boys and girls' fault that Annie looked worse in this episode. In episode 3 he asks them to go out late at night, after their parents are in bed, and walk around for a bit. But episode 4 is the one that sent me flying up the stairs to wake up Marcy. We found the computer stick under your mattress, sweetie. We wanted to know, where did you get it? Marcy asked. Claire gave it to me. Emma responded, still rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Absolutely not, sweetie, but I need you to tell me. Has Claire watched it? Emma nodded. She said she watched almost all of them. She was gonna watch the last show tonight. Marcy's head began to turn towards me, but I was at the top of the stairs before we made eye contact. Within a few seconds I was out the front door and sprinting down the street towards Claire's parents' house.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
My brother discovered a new way to walk, and something went horribly wrong, by Eggius Nerd. I nodded, as my brother, standing in the living room, delivered me his presentation. He was 16, and one of the smartest people I've ever met. That being said, he was also reckless, and sometimes his curiosity and crazy theories got the best of him. I shook my head. Damien, there's no way. He was delusional, I was sure of it. For example, oxygen likes to fuse with oxygen to make O2. It's just the way it works, they need to share electrons to be stable, and they usually bind to the closest oxygen in proximity. Yeah, I know how it works. I took chem in high school, I said, but what are you getting at? He paused, and said his next words in nearly a whisper. His words were laced with almost a sense of childlike wonder, like a kindergartner who had found a cool rock and was showing it to his friends. What if, instead of atoms bonding with the ones close to them, that stabilize them, they bonded as we choose them to, with which ones we choose them to? He began to point to the pictures in the diagram he had drawn. I nodded. I raised my hand timidly. My brother was 3 years younger than me, and it was kind of amusing that I was so confused by what he was saying. I just told you it works, of course I've tried it. He scoffed. Show me. I ushered. If I must, skeptic. He said jokingly. Tadea. I was beyond shocked, I was bewildered. So how do you get it to work? Do you realize how powerful this is? I asked, hesitantly. He thought for a minute. No, I don't. Holy shit. Holy shit. He smiled and jumped up and down, with joy. This is awesome. He squealed again. He blipped out of the room in the blink of an eye, and then I heard him yell from the other side of the house. I followed his voice, and I found him outside, once again in awe. I watched him examine the whiteboard. As I looked closer at what he was analyzing, I noticed a chunk of stuff fused to the back of the whiteboard. It looks like, because the chemical compounds are more difficult to build and break, it did it the easiest way, and this mass formed. Why? He thought harder before answering my question. It didn't just make a simple water. The molecules in it are more complex. I shrugged. It's curious. I'll have to research it more. He muttered, before breaking into a smile again. Boo! Damien shouted from behind me. He wasn't there before. I see you're enjoying your discovery. I commented, playfully nudging him. Oh my God, are you okay? I'm so sorry. I frantically apologized, and bent over to help him up. Then I noticed, his foot was stuck in the floor. That's what had caused him to lose his balance, and now the bone stuck out at a grotesque angle. What the? The paramedic stopped short, as he went to examine Damien's leg, upon noticing his foot had clipped into the floor like a video game glitch. Can't you just unbond them or something? He let out another scream of pain, beginning to hyperventilate. The paramedic turned back around to face us and clipped his radio back onto his belt. How did this happen? The fire department arrived, with saws and other tools, and chopped up the floor in order to get my brother out. His foot was still intact, but his leg was now broken because some molecule didn't form the right way, as he explained to me after he woke up in the hospital. He'll have to be non-weight bearing for about 2 months, as that was a pretty nasty break, the doctor explained. Say, how did you get stuck in a perfectly intact floor like that anyway? He queried. Over the next few days, Damien was getting better. He wasn't as tired and grumpy, and he was in slightly less pain than before. "You don't have to wait on me. I can do that all myself now." I followed his voice to the bathroom, and I found him standing on his crutches and looking in the mirror. "Maria," he mumbled. "Yes." "Something's wrong," he said meekly, turning to face me. I looked at him in shock, as I saw what had happened. Giant masses of stuff protruded from his head and body, like it had on the whiteboard. I could make out a PlayStation controller lodged between his eyes, and a chunk of the console and wires dangling out of his chest. There were no wounds either. It was terrifying. "No. They won't know how to fix it. I'm gonna try myself." He shut his eyes and concentrated hard, but nothing happened. In fact, it got worse. The masses grew bigger, and my brother began to fade away. I don't know how big it's going to get, and my brother won't listen to my pleading for him to stop.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I never had a close relationship with Sarah, my older half-sister. She was born out of my dad's earlier marriage, so by the time I came into the picture she was already a teenager. We didn't argue or fight, we simply never spent time together. I was starting kindergarten when she moved out, and she wasn't thrilled about having a younger brother. I barely saw her as I got older, meeting only occasionally during holiday get-togethers or in the once-in-a-blue-moon visits. But we were on good terms, so when the cops called us a few days ago to let us know they found her body, I was devastated. Some neighbors apparently called 911 when they heard screams and saw smoke coming out of the house. After the firefighters put out a fire in the basement, they found some charred remains that they assumed were hers. I went along with Dad to help, and we went room by room, cataloging items one by one. Given the small size of the house it went pretty fast, but we started late into the day and so we wouldn't be able to finish by nightfall. Dad packed a small box of trinkets in his trunk, and off he went home. The only room we hadn't gone into was the basement, and I wasn't about to do it by myself. The wooden door leading into it was wide open, charred by the fire and black with soot. The basement itself was in a similar condition, ravaged by the fire and by the firemen's attempts to put it out. The detective finally arrived at sundown, pulling onto the street in an old beater car. He looked like your average guy when he stepped out, dressed in a cheap suit and a loose coat hanging on his shoulders. "Hello, I am Detective Marcus," he introduced himself. That took me by surprise, but who was I to argue with the man? I fetched him a chair and a beer, so he sat down and lit up a cigarette as well. We had some admittedly awkward small talk, but the subject quickly moved to Sarah and her death. Marcus asked the usual questions. Was she depressed? Did she go out, or was she a shut-in? Did she have any friends or romantic partners he could question? All perfectly reasonable questions meant to dig up new leads, but I was the wrong person to try and answer them. I wasn't particularly close to Sarah, so I didn't know most of the answers that Marcus wanted. "Don't worry about it, I get it," he reassured me. "I don't speak much with my old man, for example. Couldn't tell you his birthday if you put a gun to my head, let alone what he's up to these days. The reason I wanted to stay in the house overnight is this." As he spoke, he pulled out a smartphone and browsed some files on it. "I'll warn you, they're pretty disturbing. If you want me to stop it at any moment, just say so." "Is this app working?" Test. "Oh, okay. Well, my name is Sarah. I moved into this house 2 days ago, and I heard some strange noises last night from the basement. I'm kinda paranoid right now, 'cause I live here alone. So I'll leave my phone out to record them and hopefully find what's up." Recording 02. About 2 hours in, around midnight, the microphone catches a distant crash. Some skittering follows, sounding like a cat running around on bathroom tiles. It goes on for a few hours, with long pauses between bouts. "What the hell?" I let out. Marcus paused the recording and looked at me. "Do you want me to stop it?" he asked. I contemplated his offer. On one hand, whatever followed had the potential to traumatize me for life. But on the other hand, the sheer curiosity would eat me up alive if I didn't find out more. So I gave in and told him to let it play. "Hello," the voice calls again, this time sounding more human. Isn't anyone there?" No one answers it. The voice falls silent, and the skittering carries it away from the microphone. No more sounds are heard that night. Recording 03. What the hell? What the hell? I knew it, someone's living in my basement. They said they'll patrol the neighborhood at night and keep on the lookout for any suspicious activity. One of them also asked me to keep recording, just in case. Recording 05. It sounds more feminine than the last time. Still inhuman, sort of like an artificially generated voice, but verging on crossing the uncanny valley into natural-sounding territory. It calls out a few more times over the span of a few hours, sounding more and more like a woman. When it becomes apparent that no one will answer its calls, the voice stops. The skittering takes it away from the microphone, and the rest of the recording is silent. "Then maybe show it to Dad," I provided a solution. He was closer to Sarah than me, he might have an idea. Marcus fell silent for a long moment. He joined his hands beneath his chin and leaned forward, propping his elbows on the table. The look in his eyes turned grim and worried. "What the hell? That was Mom." Recording 08. "Okay, I've calmed down a bit. I hope. I'll wait here tonight." The recording is silent for a long time. It turns off abruptly after about half an hour. "Do you know anything about Sarah's mother?" Marcus asked me. "It's back, I'll start another recording." The scurrying returns. Sarah's breathing is audible in the background, and it gets faster as the sound approaches her. A chair creaks, presumably as she gets up, and her footsteps join the skittering in the background. "Hello." The same woman's voice from the previous recording calls out. "Who are you?" "Mom." Sarah cries out in a trembling voice. "Mom." The voice repeats her words again. "Who are you?" The voice repeats. Footsteps resound again, approaching the voice as it says the same line over and over. "Answer me," Sarah demands. "Answer me," the voice coos. "What do you want?" The voice lets out a few garbled words, but they are unintelligible. Its pitch and intonation adjust before it speaks again. I've missed you, my dear." Footsteps sound out as Sarah backs away, and the voice grows distant. It calls out, over and over again, but the facade cracks. It can't maintain its grasp on the charade for long, and it devolves back into the uncanny valley slowly. "The recordings are time-stamped," Marcus said. After this one ended, Sarah didn't make another one for a few days. Considering what I just heard, I didn't know what to answer. I kept silent, mulling over my own thoughts and feelings on the matter. As intriguing as the situation was, I mostly felt horrified and sorry for Sarah. I couldn't even begin to imagine what must have gone through her head after living through that. "Why are you showing me all of this?" I asked Marcus after a while. If you really are a detective and part of the police force, you'd lock stuff like this away behind 10 locks and keys. I don't know. What the hell is going on? Answer me, Clancy, and be honest, he demanded. Whether or not I'll show you more depends on it. I don't know. A ghost? A demon? A skinwalker? I hazarded a guess. Marcus seemed surprised by that. He pushed the cigarette away from his face, letting out another lungful of smoke. What I think is irrelevant, I want to know what you believe. That's what I believe, I answered. I didn't know Sarah well, but she wouldn't fake something like this. So either she was haunted by something, or you're messing with me. Do you, or do you not, Clancy? No hard feelings either way, I can't force you to listen. Yeah. Start the next one. I don't know for sure why I decided that. We could sit here all day while I blame curiosity or, more likely, stupidity, but those answers would be half-truths at best. It didn't feel like a want at the time, it felt like a need. I needed to go through with it, I needed to hear all of it. The reasons I felt that way didn't matter at that moment. I have a good feeling about you, kid, Marcus mumbled as his finger tapped the screen and started the next recording. Recording 10. I don't know what to do anymore, it's driving me nuts. Whoever's messing with me comes back every night, I hear them even now. Sarah, my dear, the voice calls out, not entirely human. Please, Do you know this Amy? Marcus asked as the recording ended. I think Sarah mentioned her a few times, but I never met her. I looked over my shoulder as I answered, at the corridor leading to the kitchen. The basement door was on one of the walls there, and I could see the locks mentioned in the recording. They hung open on the door, but they were still intact. Marcus snapped his fingers to get my clearly distracted attention, then he pointed down at the phone. Yeah. Before I hit play, I want to ask you something again. Did you by any chance suffer any mental trauma? As a child, or even recently? Something that shook you to your core? You're taking all of this surprisingly well. Your mental fortitude is pretty high, Marcus answered. That's sometimes a sign of, never mind. He hit play before I could pry him for more details, so I fell silent to not miss it. But I made up my mind, when it was over Marcus would have a lot of answering to do. Recording 11. I've tried my best to ignore it. I slept at friends' houses some nights, but that's getting harder to pull off. I tried looking for roommates, but no one wants to share a small house with this stupid pandemic around. And my search for a boyfriend is just as fruitless. I'm getting a bit old for the dating scene. I'll keep at it, but from the looks of things everyone's mostly down to fuck and not much else. I don't want to resort to frequent one-night stands. The police still answer my calls, thankfully, but they're not doing much. Even their patrols are getting less and less frequent. I'm at a total loss here. I've considered selling the house and moving, but I can't afford that. Dad might be my last resort, maybe I can move in with him and his wife and son. We're not exactly friends though, so who knows? And I can't risk telling them, there's no chance in hell they'll take me in if they think I'm crazy. The recording starts, and it is quiet save for static for a few moments. Sarah takes a deep breath and a barely audible step. Of course, my dear, the voice says sweetly. I'm always here. You stop that, you hear me? Stop using her voice. The voice coughs loudly. It changes as it does, slowly morphing and growing deeper. When it stops, it sounds male. I paused hearing that. It was Dad's voice, no doubt about it. Although it sounded ever so slightly off, I could recognize it. Up to that point, my running theory was that the thing could mimic the dead. But Dad is still very much alive, so that threw my theory under the bus. I didn't know what to believe anymore. What do you want? I just want to see you. Open the door. Sarah backs away as her breathing grows faster. Sarah runs away from the door as the voice's calls continue in the background. That was your father, correct? Marcus asked when the recording ended. And what does that tell us? I pondered the question for a moment. It's not a skinwalker, like I thought at first. I don't know much about them, but like, skinwalkers need to kill their victims to copy them, right? Not necessarily, Marcus answered. But they do need to hear the voice they're trying to copy. And anyways, a skinwalker could have broken down the door. So it's something else, I deduced. But what? I'm not sure yet. Marcus chuckled drily. All in due time, Clancy. We still have a few recordings to go through. He hit play on the next recording, so we listened. Recording 14. Recording 15. That's as far as I got into that particular recording. I slapped my hand over the phone, with enough force to send cracks into the glass surface of the table. Marcus jumped back in his chair, taken by surprise. What the hell? I let out. That's my fucking voice. Think, Clancy. Did it ever hear Sarah's dead mother? Marcus answered my question with another. For how long has she been dead? So what does that tell you? Correct, Marcus said, satisfied by my breakthrough. All in due time, he repeated once more. It's been some time since Sarah's first recording of the mysterious voice, and it sounds thoroughly human at this point. No more cracks in its facade can be gleaned. Listen to me, and listen well. I won't put up with this anymore. You have tonight to leave my house and leave me the fuck alone. I'll go to bed, I'll plug in some earphones, and I'll ignore you. If I hear you again tomorrow night, you can bet your ass I'll come down there and end you, whoever or whatever you are. Understood? She sounds different somehow. Worried. Tired. Manic. Please, sis, for fuck's sake open the door and let me out. I don't know. I can't remember. But it's scary down here. Let me out, please. It copies your mannerisms well, it's spot on actually, Marcus interrupted. It does, I admitted, feeling the color in my face draining little by little as I listened. Given enough time to learn, that thing could be a top predator. And let me guess, you can't let that happen. We can't let that happen, Marcus corrected. All in due time, I replied and pushed play on the recording. Sarah doesn't say anything else. Her footsteps carry her away from the basement door, and the voice pleads in the background. It shifts back and forth between different people, quick and almost seamless. For short periods of time between the adjustments, glimpses of the animalistic nature make it through. The current plan is simple, I'll fuck that thing up if I hear it again tonight. I'll pour gasoline into the basement through the crack beneath the door, and I'll light it on fire from up here. Fuck the house, fuck the authorities, fuck the repercussions, I can't let it live. I don't care if I end up in prison or a loony bin so long as it dies here. My God, Sarah, I mumbled as the recording ended. Hearing her in that state of mind broke my heart. No one deserves to go through what she did, and the fact that we didn't help her sooner, that none of us made an effort to be in her life, it ate me up inside. We could have made a difference, I could have made a difference. Maybe then, this tragedy would have had a better ending. Recording 17. A liquid sloshes around in the background, presumably the gasoline. Her breathing is strained and close to the microphone. Metal rings out as it hits the floor. Sarah. It calls out, in the voice of her mother. I warned you. Something topples to the floor, and the sound of rushing liquid is heard. This is on you, it's not my fault. Sarah, please. The voice yells, more desperate than ever. What are you doing? What I said I would. You didn't listen, why didn't you listen? Enough. Stop using her fucking voice. The thing falls silent. Sarah takes a deep breath, and the sound of gasoline pouring out of the canister dies down as it presumably runs out. Her clothes rustle as she searches her pockets, and she shakes the matchbox when she finds it. The sounds of the matches jumping around inside is the only audible thing for a moment. She opens the box and fumbles around with the matches for a moment. The voice doesn't answer her, but instead skitters away from the door frantically. Sarah takes one final breath, and the sound of a match being struck is heard loud and clear. Please. It lets out one final call, for the first time using Sarah's voice. I don't know, Marcus answered. It could very well be the case, but then. Then where is she? So, Monster Hunter, huh? I asked after a few moments of heavy silence. We're always on the lookout for new recruits, so consider tonight your entry test, he admitted. You're a bit rough around the edges, but you seem like a decent candidate to me. Marcus just shrugged his shoulders. You'll never know unless you try, I sure as shit didn't. Never expected to hunt the things that go bump in the night before I tried. And what if I refuse? I asked. Will you kill me? Or erase my memory or something? At that, Marcus just laughed out loud. Look, kid, it's like I told you time and time again tonight. I can't force you to do anything. But consider it, okay? As he said that, he pulled out a business card that he tossed on the table in front of me. The world desperately needs more people like us, if there were more of us to go around then maybe. Yeah. It might be too late for your sister, but you could make the difference for someone else. If you make up your mind, doesn't matter if it's tomorrow or a year from now, give me a call. And take care. In the end, I had to stay over for a little while longer despite my constant complaints. Because of the slummy neighborhood and sketchy neighbors, Dad didn't want the house to go unoccupied. Hey, Clancy, she greeted, sounding almost casual. What? How? I let out in a meek voice as my tears started to flow. I'm sorry, she answered. A lot happened, and I had some problems. I ended up running away to a friend for a while, and, she sighed. It's a long story, okay? And very crazy. Tell me about it, I said, rubbing away the tears. Call Dad and tell him to come over, he needs to know you're okay ASAP. Don't take long, she said, and went inside to find somewhere to sit. I watched her walk down the corridor towards the kitchen, pausing by the basement door. She looked at it for a long moment, then she continued on her way. I pulled out my phone and Marcus's card, unsure about what to do. The thing's facade was good, damn near perfect, but as it spoke those last words its voice cracked just a little. 10.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is HorrorSlop.
What better cure for cabin fever than a stay at an actual cabin out in the woods? The ultimate social distancing. Nature would give us some space from each other, as well as the freedom to roam and stay active. Can you look at the fucking road, Paul? My wife waved an arm over the dashboard. Feels like you've caught every pothole on the way over here. My job as a criminal profiler took up 80% of my life. With never-ending business trips, overtime, and lecturing gigs, I was almost never home. It hadn't been a problem in the past, because we chose not to have kids, and Camilla had her paintings and art shows to keep her busy. We enjoyed the odd evenings and weekends we got to spend together, but our careers always came first. Initially, this common ground had made us a true power couple. Now, however, and number X200B. The GPS had cut out a good 20 minutes back, but luckily Camilla hadn't noticed. I was hoping we were heading down the right dirt road. I'd been up to my uncle's place every summer as a kid, and I thought I knew the way well. Everything seemed familiar enough, even the heavy fog from the nearby lake that gave the woods that signature dark, ominous vibe. Paul, what the fuck is that? Camilla bolted upright, staring out her side window. Shit, lock the doors. Lock the fucking doors and don't slow down, she cried. Jesus, I gasped, watching streaks of blood streaming down the man's chin as he continued wailing. His mouth was a gaping hole filled with mucus and blood, but no tongue. I needn't have worried, since the wounded stranger was already on the move, leaving a puddle of blood on the hood. He stumbled past my side window, twisting his neck to look back at the other side of the road. His wails grew louder as he lunged himself with each step, hurrying to get away. I wanted to call out to the man, tell him to stay so that we could call him an ambulance, but Camilla was completely out of control in the seat beside me, screaming at me to drive, trying to push my leg down on the gas pedal. We arrived half an hour earlier than expected. Did you get through on the phone? She asked, her voice raspy and tired. Yes, they might send someone over to talk to us about what we saw. I walked up to her, attempting an embrace, but she shrank away from me, her tired eyes narrowing. This wasn't us. How did we become the stereotypical bickering couple we swore we'd never be? Most likely, the man that we saw was involved in some freak accident. Less likely, but also possible, he had an unfortunate encounter with a wild animal. Least likely of all, he was running from another human being. I didn't see any ligature marks on his wrists, and it's pretty damn near impossible to mutilate a live victim without restraints. If you really can't get over this, we can head home around midday tomorrow. That's when the fog settles. But I swear, Camilla, if we're going back to the city, one of us needs to check into a hotel room or something, because I cannot spend another day fighting like this. My right hand instinctively went to my side, grazing the concealed semi-automatic through my jacket. Hello officer, I replied, my name is Paul Fever, and this is my wife, Camilla. We weren't expecting you this soon. I'm sure you weren't, the man replied in a manner so artificially cheerful that I shuddered. My name is Officer Harry Bullock, and I'm here to take your statement about the man you saw on the road today. Officer Bullock's false smile widened, exposing a thin line of yellowed, crooked teeth. He raised a hand up to his sunglasses and slid them down his nose, revealing two expressionless, black eyes that ran down my wife's body. "Wait, stop," I cut him off. "Could we please see your badge and ID, officer?" I don't mean to be rude, but an officer showing up to a secluded cabin on foot is a little odd. I know for a fact the nearest police station is about 30 miles up north. I went up there to consult on a case not too long ago. "No, I think we'll wait here for you to go fetch them," I called after the man, who was already halfway up the path. "You just knock on the door when you get back, officer." "Do you think that man will come back?" she mumbled into my shoulder. Something very strange was going on. I stared out the small kitchen window after finishing up the dinner dishes, my mind heavy with the implications of that day. "Yes," I replied. "And number X200B?" There it was, right in the middle of the top shelf, tastefully staged in front of the ham, cheese, and pickle jar. A freshly severed human tongue on a tea saucer. There was no time to bother with 911. I still had the number of the chief of police for the nearest department and called him directly. "Who's this?" Chief Crawford's groggy voice barked into my ear. "Sorry to bother you, Earl, but this is an emergency. It's Paul Fever. We worked together on that machete killer case a couple of years back. Did you happen to work late last night and get the report about the man with the missing tongue?" I asked. "You mean the call from the other day?" "I was just leaving when I heard one of the officers on duty calling in to say it was a false report." "So why didn't anyone go out to interview the witness?" I demanded, angered by the evident incompetency of the local police. There would be a big fuss once they realized they had screwed over an agent. "What the hell are you talking about, Earl?" I had begun pacing the perimeter again, staring into the depths of the forest as I tried to wrap my mind around the chief's blatant lies. "I'm the one who called in the report, and I'm currently at the cabin with my wife. Some guy claiming to be an officer showed up yesterday, but he didn't have a badge and left. This morning I woke up to find a goddamn human tongue in my fridge, and you're telling me your people really came up here to check things out?" There was no reply on the other end, only static. I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the screen to see that it had begun flickering. I shook the phone in exasperation, not really thinking it would help, but desperately hoping it might. After a few more flickers, the screen went black. I cursed the stupid device and headed back to the cabin, trying to wrap my mind around what I had just heard. Something made me slow my stride. It was the feeling of being watched, that familiar tickle at the back of my neck that, given my current predicament, made all the hairs on my body stand on end. I jerked my head left and right, straining to see into the thick, dark forest beyond my uncle's old vegetable beds. No, nothing there as far as the eye could see. The feeling wouldn't give though, so I turned back to look at the house and felt my lungs and heart simultaneously freeze in my chest. Someone was watching me from the upstairs bedroom where I'd left my beautiful wife asleep by herself. Officer Harry Bullock looked down at me, just as I'd seen him in my dreams, only on the other side of the window. On to part 2. This is part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, final,
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.